Okay, very good. Welcome to the June 15, 2017 meeting of the Sherborn Board of Selectmen. And we can ask if our town administrator would please read the agenda.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. First, we'll vote to approve or amend the agenda and add topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance. And to my knowledge, there aren't any of those items. Then consideration of annual appointments to various boards and committees. And CM&D update on road projects and consideration and possible vote. And consideration of rescinding 2003 Board of Selectmen vote that rejected MGL Chapter 59, Section 2D to allow the town to capture increased property values through supplemental assessments. Then consideration of Board of Selectmen minutes of April 27th, 2017 and May 16, 2017. Then interviews for the CM&D Director, Facilities Manager with 4 candidates and discussion following.
Okay, very good. Anybody have anything to amend?
I do. I had a suggestion that we have, oh, you want to go ahead?
Good. Sean, you had something?
I didn't hear what Paul just said. I do have something to add.
I think he stopped because somebody else talked. So
I didn't,
we'll go in some orderly process. Paul, you go first.
I had suggested we have a contingent executive session in case we agreed on a CM&D candidate. We could go into a discussion of contract with him and what to offer him and things like that.
Okay. How do others feel about that? I kind of thought that was a little premature tonight, and I figured we would have to come back probably and do that at a later time, or delegate the town administrator to start that process, you know, to the point where we then conclude it if need be, rather than try to get that done tonight.
Well, I am concerned about, I've heard from some people about what the salary is for these candidates, that apparently the former occupant was at one level, and now there's an expectation for almost a 50% increase in that. So I'm not sure what candidates expect, and so I'm not sure it's something that we shouldn't have a discussion on as to, in an executive session, as to what salary range we're actually looking.
So you want to have a discussion about the salary range rather than a specific negotiation?
No, it has to be, to do contract negotiations, it has to be someone specific. So this was a contingent executive session if we had made progress towards finding somebody.
Okay. Mark, do you have any thoughts on this?
I mean, I don't have a problem putting a contingent one on. I doubt we're going to be in a position to use it, and I don't think we could do a discussion of, use it only for discussing the salary level, so.
All right. So all in favor of amending to put Paul's suggested contingent executive session on at the end of the agenda?
Do we have a second?
Well, Paul, are you a second, or?
A second.
Okay, all in favor. Okay, so we'll add that. Sean, you had a comment or something on the agenda?
I was going to ask, and I don't know if David intended, under the CM&D update, I was going to ask that we add a discussion, if not a possible vote, for removal of unsafe trees on the town campus.
I figured it was covered in there, but
Okay.
If it is, that's
I haven't
fine.
added clearly.
Okay, great. Do we have a motion to do that? Second?
So
All in favor? Okay, thank you, Sean. And was there something else, Mark?
I don't see any future meetings scheduled, so if we could just
We have none.
add.
Yeah, we should add
an
add
item
at the
for
end,
selectmen reports and scheduling
Thought the summer was off.
the next couple of meetings. That would be good.
Our town administrator just said he thought the summer we took off, but no, I'm sorry, David. Okay, so selectmen reports in next meeting. We'll put that at the end of the agenda by consensus. Okay, good. Next, we have public comment. Susan, you're up. The floor is yours. The table is yours.
Yeah, I didn't put it in tonight.
We added, did we accept the entire agenda? I don't think we did.
move to adopt the agenda as amended.
All in favor? Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Good evening, Susan Tyler, 26 Western Avenue. My agenda comment there with fire stations is kind of a twofold. Unfortunately, I wasn't at town meeting. I was watching, and there was an article for the Station 1, the fire station was down there on, by Cemetery Lane, and fixing the doors. That's one question as to when that's gonna start and get done. And the second thing is, we now have apparatus, it's my understanding, I have 3 members on the fire department in my household, and it's my understanding that all of our frontline apparatus is now over at Station 2, which is on Farm Road. So we have frontline apparatus versus brush vehicles all on one side of the railroad tracks. So how is the town gonna look at and address that Station 1, again, down there by Cemetery Lane, cannot accommodate a frontline apparatus?
We would have to have the chief here
Well-
to discuss that.
I
Thank
just
you.
wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, that's good. We'll soon have our chief on duty who can probably answer that question, hopefully.
And as far as the ambulance door, the Station 1's doors being fixed, that was an article passed at town meeting.
Yeah. David,
that
do we
should
know
be-
where we are in that process?
I haven't started that project.
So,
I haven't started that project.
Okay.
okay?
That would,
And the money is approved, but so we're $500,000 in other projects as well.
We can't
I
spend
don't
it till
think your
July
mic
1
is
anyway,
working.
right?
I don't think your mic is working.
We can,
no, we have the money.
we can.
We could spend it
Wasn't-
in
Yeah,
It
'cause
wasn't
some of
borrowed.
it
We
is
have the
free
money?
cash. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Excellent.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Always a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure.
Okay, next is CM&D update and road projects. And John, do you want to come up to the table?
What about the annual appointments?
Oh, did we skip one? Sorry, John.
You did.
We skipped one. We should be able to dispose of that pretty quickly, the annual appointments. Paul, do you want to?
Sure. We have gone through a process. We've advertised. Our terms come up in June. We're in the month of June. We've contacted committees. We've asked for recommendations. And based on all of that, I'd like to move. Do you want me to read them all? Probably, that's probably
It
best
probably
practice.
should, so people know.
So I'd like to move the following appointments. Agricultural Commission, John Dowse for a term to expire June 15, 2020. Conservation Commission, Gene Bednar for a term to expire June 15, 2020. Jessica Jackson for a term to expire June 15, 2020.
They're all 2020, except for 2 of them. Maybe we just can say.
One of which he just read. Gene Bender was 217.
No, I changed that. You must
It's
have my
2020.
old list.
So there's 2 that are, there's,
17 is right now. We
Yeah.
appoint
You
her
have
to
my old,
June.
you should
I know.
have my old.
you did
Seven-
last night.
The
Last
irony.
night.
Her term is up.
So there are 2 that are 19, 18, but let's stipulate, and one that's 19, so we can stipulate the rest are 20, and that'll speed it up.
All right.
Cultural Council.
Cultural Council, Alicia Goganian for a term to expire, as we've just indicated. Elderly Housing Committee, Mike Hickam, Susan Landsman, Janet Walsh for a term to expire June 15, 2019. Kitty Sturgis for a term to expire June 15, 2018. Elderly and Disabled Taxation Committee, Rosemary Sorter. Energy Committee, Gino Carlucci and Alicia Goody. Historical Commission, Peggy Novak. Historic District Commission, Peggy Novak for a term to expire June 15, 2019, and Susie Wheelwright for a term of 2020.
20.
Yeah.
Insurance Advisory Committee, Lisa Lynch, Tony Abro, and Walter Thornton. Open Space Committee, Marion Nutra and Kelly McKintock. Pound Forest Committee, Peg Robinson. Recycling Committee, Ann McDonough.
I think
That's it.
That's all? Good, okay. So do we have a motion to accept the slate?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second?
All in favor? Okay. Is there any luck tracking down Chuck?
I left
on
him a
his way?
message to call
Okay.
us, yeah.
Okay. All right. So next item is the town roads, CM&D roads update and consideration and possible vote on the recommendations. And we have a list of projects.
Yes, you have, John McAvoy is the foreman from CM&D, and he's been involved in this each year, reviewing the roads and recommendation. I can't find it now. You want to talk about which ones you recommended?
Sure. I mean, I've been here a long time, and I've seen a lot of work done on the roads, and I have a recommendation on roads that I think should be done. And I used to give Ed the list of roads, and I don't know if you people have seen the list that Ed printed out. So that actually came from me, that I used to recommend, but do you want a list of the roads that I would recommend tonight?
Sure, yeah, this is, you had
That's what we
sent-
have.
You had sent an email to Diane, right?
Right, yes, I
Want to go
did.
through those?
The priority roads that I would have is Coolidge, Kendall, and Speen. Those were done probably 10 years ago with NovaChip. That's not real hot top, they call it on there. And the life expectancy of that was probably 6 to 8 years, so that one's overdue. But the problem we run into this year, the bids just came in last week, and the bids are very high this year. And I talked to 2 superintendents from neighboring towns, and they're going to rebid the bids on the asphalt.
Okay, try to get that price down.
Yeah, they come in very high.
I got a
So-
question about that, John.
What's that?
The private guys are saying the tonnage rate just went down, and they're passing that savings on for driveways and stuff. How come the road bids are high?
That's because the town decided to join a group of towns, 5 or 6. And so they just pay a fee to join this group, and they do all the work for them.
We've been in the consortium, but John
Right.
and I had talked that there were a couple of projects that we could do with a private vendor.
Right.
Probably get them on it more quickly and cheaper than waiting for the MAPC
Right.
bids.
Right. I mean, if you put your own bid out, you could probably get a cheaper rate. But right now, all these contractors are getting busy. They're all on like 495, 93, Mass
Yep.
Pike. That's where the big work is, so. And I know they didn't have a bid for chip sealing, so that's another thing. I don't know if you've seen a lot of chip sealing, but that's usually a back road, something they put in the back roads, not the main roads. But anyway, Coolidge, Kendall, and Speen would be my priorities.
Okay.
And then I have another one, Salwin Street. This one right in back of the police station. It's getting a little tired out here. And there's a section of Old Orchard Road from Washington Street up to Page Farm that could use done. And looking at the Chapter 90 money, I called up the District 3 in Worcester, and the Chapter 90 money that this town has right now would only do Coolidge, Kendall, and Speen.
Okay.
So they wouldn't do. And I know the town appropriated some town funds, did they?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we did. That was in anticipation, I think, of the state money, but yeah.
Right. And there's some places in town, I think we could use that money on non-accepted roads. Like I'm looking at Woodhaven, Joe Meady from Woodhaven's gonna pave in on the left side of the building. And just to tie it in from the circle out to Main Street, I got an estimate with the same contractor, he's gonna be there with the same equipment, and it came in at $20,000. So you could actually finish that whole project off for the elderly housing over there, and then you'd be done for years on that one. Another one you can use Chapter 90 funds is Cemetery Lane. That's not an accepted road. So something like that, you could use town funds on. But we haven't got a price on that one. So those are just my suggestions.
Okay.
I mean, I have some other Chapter 90 roads that I would like to see done. I know Hollis Street's falling apart, from Mill Street up to Western Avenue. Farm Road's falling apart between Main Street and Lake Street. You know, if we don't keep up with these roads, you're gonna lose them, and it's gonna cost you more money in the long run, so.
That's right. That's right.
So, do you have any questions?
I got a couple.
Sean, go ahead.
One came up today. I think you were copied on the emails from Natick. Natick's going to do a truck exclusion for the
Right.
entire summer.
Mm-hmm.
One, I don't know, do you even think we could get Coolidge Kendall Speed started during the summer, or do you think we already missed that
I
window?
had a contractor come in the other day and look at it with me, and he thinks maybe August they can get in here.
Which,
But I told him
obviously,
we-
we prefer. The problem is, do we think it's a good idea to do Coolidge Kendall Speed while there's a truck exclusion in downtown Natick? That means all the Tresca trucks, every truck through downtown's going down Coolidge.
My personal opinion, no.
We should wait.
Let's wait. But I think you need to at least get a binder, like a first coat on for the winter, because those roads aren't gonna last the winter.
I don't want to wait till next year, I'm just
Right.
asking if we should wait till the road clears through Natick
Right.
and let them pound their own pavement instead of
I
ours.
think you're better off, personally.
So what do you mean by that, Sean? Just wait
Well,
until that truck detour
If we
is
try to
done?
get during the summer, which of course we'd want that
Yeah,
with that intersection, those three roads. Natick sent us out that email today that they're going to basically commercial truck exclude
so we'll be
27,
getting
which means they're
50%
all
more.
going to go down Coolidge
Yeah,
Street.
yeah.
They can't really avoid town, they're just going to going down Coolidge or Elliott,
Yeah,
most of which will go Coolidge,
yeah.
right on our fresh pavement, or while we're trying to do the work.
So your idea is wait until the fall when they say they're gonna be done the end of
At
August?
least, yeah, they say they're going to be done by the end of, which puts it right near the beginning of school. Now, we're not going to grind it, right?
I wouldn't grind those
I don't wanna
roads. I
grind
think there's a great base underneath those roads, because probably 25 years ago, we ground that road up. It's got a great base on, I'd just pave right over those roads.
And how many days' job is that for like, Coolidge especially?
Kendall's going to need some work, right?
It just needs, what they come in, they shim all the low spots, then they go over it again, so. It's probably gonna be a couple days' work done
A
there.
couple of days, okay. So, I mean,
It'll be disruptive, but it's better than putting a brand new, $300,000 worth of road down and having it get torn up by Tresca trucks that normally would have been going through downtown.
I've asked them if they had a backup. I sent them an email today asking to let us know what they're thinking the backup would be if Coolidge was completely blocked off. Let's see what they say. But they may be able to open up their road and not.
Yeah, I was
Work
just
for
thinking,
3
why don't we
days.
do a truck exclusion on Coolidge Street while it's under construction and tell all the traffic to go to Natick? Why is it that they get first dibs and all their truck comes to us?
I can't answer that.
I don't think they have much of a choice the way they're going to have to do that work. And we got to be a good neighbor. We
Yeah.
rely on Natick pretty heavily. And the fact is, it's their own trucks that are going to be cycling through because their highway department uses Coolidge Speed all the time when they leave because they can't go up by the school. So it's going to be a fair amount of truck traffic. And I think we just need to accept it.
yeah.
I'm concerned about all that construction going on, well, coming back for September, Labor Day, schools opening, school buses, the whole thing. Now we've got a couple of major streets in town,
You mean our streets?
our streets.
But our project is far shorter than theirs. We want them to get done with it as quick as possible. It's going to be disruptive to us. It's going to cause traffic flow issues here.
I don't think we got an answer to the question about how long it would take to do Coolidge.
He said a couple of days.
A couple days.
Okay. That's not a big deal.
So,
I have
oh, go ahead.
one other question for David. We did the roads assessment last year.
Mm-hmm.
Where do these fall on there?
I haven't fit those in or run that process.
But as far as last year's road assessment,
If we didn't.
Coolidge
include
was
it,
always
I'd
top
have
of
to
the
go
list
back
after
and look.
Washington.
Definitely Coolidge and Kendall's always been on there, but I'd have to pull up the list. I
All right,
can-
we should do that.
Yeah.
Put a lot of effort into it.
so the objective of putting this on, I think, was because there was concern we weren't ready to start any highway projects. But what I'm hearing is, even if we were ready to start these projects, we can't start them until fall.
Well, that one.
That one.
I think we
But
should.
that's all we have the money for.
Or August. I'm trying
August,
I'm
okay.
trying to get in before school starts.
Okay, yeah. So, so the question is, do we give direction?
Well, I'm concerned with what Mark just brought up. The one thing that we want to avoid that's gone on in the town in the past is sort of ad hoc choices on road work. We really want a systematic look at the roads. That's why I had originally suggested we have a strong interim appointment on a CMD director, temporary CMD director. But if we have a road assessment that was done, I think as part of the town's capital projects, and we haven't looked at that, to compare the proposed list with what is that assessment, that seems kind of fundamental. You need to do that first.
So I think we just had Sean tell us that Coolidge and Kendall have been on the top of the list on that road assessment for,
I just know it is. We never saw the road assessment.
and we also had John tell us that he's the guy
Well,
who
after-
was doing the recommendations
went
to
out.
Ed. And he's
we saw it.
observed Coolidge and Kendall too.
But the whole
The one
point
that
is
he
to
had the
have-
state help us with.
I just want to correct that what was done on the Capitol through the community compact was the capital vehicle assessment, not the roads assessment. Ed had done his own roads assessment,
Right.
if you remember.
That's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I thought
Either way,
that,
don't.
Washington Street was at the top of it, and we.
Right, we banged that
Right.
one out.
and then Coolidge. But there was
Coolidge
gonna
there?
be a
Was Coolidge
roadway
there?
management plan that Ed never finished. It was just a list. The list came from John.
No, there was a full spreadsheet that listed, he had a grading, and then he had
Can you
the
get
length
it?
of the sections.
Can you get it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Just pass it out to us
And,
now? And like table this for,
And then the estimated cost based on the tonnage you plug in.
Any of that's not gonna change that we know we're in danger of losing Coolidge Street. Anyone that drives it
We've been told that
knows
by
it. We know
multiple
that.
people.
And if you want, Skip will come in and tell you again.
Yeah.
And we know that it was at the top of the list. I mean, it was right next to Washington Street. It was one or the other last year. The question is, how do we make sure we don't double down on a traffic nightmare in the middle of summer?
But that doesn't mean we can't authorize that work to be done and scheduled for a time when it's not gonna create a traffic.
I think we should.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'd like to do too. It sounds like Paul and Mark want to wait at least until we can get this report back, and maybe Diane can go find it.
No, I don't want to wait, I just want to make sure that we're, you know, that somebody looks at it and makes sure that we're doing the things we said we wanted to do in the right order.
yeah, I'm
Presuming
suggesting
that's the
do it right-
case.
Do it
Are
right
you
now.
familiar, I'm sure you helped Ed put this thing together that
Mhm.
we're talking about, and do you know where these roads are on that list? Are they,
What, Coolidge, Kendall, and Spain?
yeah,
I think they're right up there. I know it's a main drag and a lot of commuters use it, but that's a big road coming in another town.
Yes.
I mean, I
So-
hate to
so let's-
spend my money on main roads because the residents are paying a lot of taxes. So
But what
we gotta
about
try to
Kendall?
do some side roads once in a while, you know, to help people out. I mean, that Old Orchard, I don't know if anybody goes up there, but it's pretty bad up there. And there's one behind the police station, it's not gonna last much longer.
yeah, I was
either.
thinking that as I was driving here
Yeah.
this evening.
Yeah, that's not great.
So,
But
But
I'm
I'm
really
concerned
asking you, I know this,
being Kendall, and Kendall is like way on the periphery of the town, where the other roads you're mentioning are more central to the town. So is Kendall Street up there as the second choice on the plan? All I'm saying is, let's get the assessment, let's take a look at it tonight.
I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I do remember when we were asking for
Know
the
where that
money
is,
at
Diane?
town meeting.
It's gonna be it's gonna be in one of the packages from our meeting when we had it, right? I mean, that's,
Town meeting, we had available at that time, too.
Are there a lot of efficiencies to doing Coolidge, Kendall, and Speen at the same time?
yes, there is, because you already have the equipment there
So
instead of,
can you estimate the savings by doing them all at the same time versus if we did them separately?
well, the details are gonna be there, the trucking for the equipment's coming in there.
But is it
You're probably talking 10, 20,000, maybe.
on a total of 90,000?
It's gonna probably cost you
Oh, it's more than 90.
probably 300,000 to do all just those roads.
But the bulk of that is Coolidge, right, because it's the longest.
It's a long road.
And Speen Street's like 200 feet.
See,
Yeah.
the more you, like if you grind the road, that costs you a lot more money.
Sure.
Instead of just paving right over, it's got a good base in it, so. So what I'm really asking you, do you want to go out to rebid again because the prices came in so high? Or just,
I think it makes sense to do this.
I think it sounds like we have the time to do it.
Yeah.
I know the town of Ashland just rebid theirs yesterday,
Oh,
and the
just
town of
yesterday.
Millis is going to do theirs, so.
Yeah.
And they're all in the group that we belong to, so.
John, I think it makes a lot of sense to rebid based
Yeah, I
on
agree.
that.
John, are you confident they're gonna be comfortable going over the Nova chip?
Yes, I am. I took the contractor that got the bid down there, yes, and he said he wouldn't grind that either, because it's got a great base underneath it.
Okay, because I didn't particularly want to grind Washington Street, but Lynch did not feel comfortable going over it.
Oh, this
Lynch
com-
that did it, right?
Yeah.
And not that I want to grind Coolidge, but
Well, if you, every time you grind, you can't pave more roads. You're cutting
No,
down
I
the
know.
roads that you want to pave.
and that road could stand to come up a few inches anyway, because the edges aren't really
Yeah.
low.
So what, I think we're all in agreement we're going to rebid, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And the other thing I asked you is Woodhaven. That's not a Chapter 90 road, and the money they appropriate at town meeting, would you like to finish that road coming
Yes.
out to the main road?
I move that we do that.
Explain what's going on. There's a project that Woodhaven itself is doing, and this is just the
Correct.
stretch that the town controls?
Right. No, it's not an accepted road.
Yeah,
Okay, so Woodhaven is only paying the left parking lot and around the circle.
yeah,
They don't have enough money to pave all the way out to Route 27.
okay.
And while they have the equipment there, I got a price from the same contractor that's doing Woodhaven. So he gave me a price to finish it out to the main roads.
And it's never been redone, right?
Not right.
It's been trenched a couple times when the
Twice.
fire hydrant pipe got added, and then most recently, Abby, they did a nice job patching it, but it's a good time to redo it now that they're
It's
done.
$20,000, so it's kind of cheap.
What's the breakdown between costs that are covered by the residents there and costs that the town typically picks up?
But this is this is the street itself.
Okay, but it's a,
Village Way serves Leland Farms. It's now serving
This is Abby, Leland, and Woodhaven.
Abbey.
A lot of residents in
Road.
there.
so it's not a town accepted road,
Correct.
but it's a town owned road?
It's town property.
Town property. If we accepted it at town meeting, we would be able to get chapter 90 funds for it?
Yes,
Correct.
I don't
Why
know,
don't we
but
accept
it's not
it?
like we're gonna get more chapter 90 money.
yeah, we
Well,
do.
we could spend chapter
Well,
90 money.
slightly, it'd be incremental.
It's based on the number of miles.
So we're gonna pave it this year and then put it up to be accepted next year, is that the idea?
It wouldn't even make 1% of our road.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna say, it's gonna cost you more to have the equipment brought in later on.
next year, right?
Instead of doing everything
Yeah,
at once.
yeah, yeah.
Because the contractor's going to be there anyway, doing the work.
Correct. And I already got the price that he gave me. So he's just waiting for a decision on it.
Mhm.
That's why I say I think we should do it. So I move that we do it.
I'll second it. It fits into the reason we did the $450,000 extra capital.
Mhm.
Be able to do some of these projects.
Well, some of that was in anticipation of the chapter 90 money.
And knowing that the chapter 90 money would do only Coolidge, Kendall, Spain.
I think there's a difference of view on what we were doing with that money that was appropriated. I mean, we could have added this project to the capital items.
Yeah, it's a little big to just sort of make an on-the-fly decision, I think.
What's the condition of that road now?
Not very good, and it's got a couple patches on it from trenching.
And this would level it off, this would basically give it a
It'd
new
be a fresh
surface.
coat.
Correct.
The edges are pretty torn up, but they're probably fixing that, because most of the damage is near the loop.
Yep.
And is any of this still being used for construction or anything?
Not heavy
Pretty
trucks.
minimal. There's nothing big going in and out of Abbey. Abbey's finished paved.
And the contractor is gonna take care of the loom after it's done because they agreed. I mean, the contractor from Abbey Road told me that he would re-loom because they parked all their trucks out there
Yeah.
during the construction season, so.
They're also supposed to be fixing the stone wall.
Table it till
Okay.
another meeting?
Well, when's this contractor gonna be out there, John, do you know?
I think Joe has them lined up in the end of June, so it's coming up pretty soon.
Pretty soon.
So I made a motion, and it was seconded.
Okay, so motion second, any further discussion on this?
I mean, I'd prefer to see it, listed with our regular capital items. I think it's, again, it's a little bit much to just do on the spur of the moment. So I'm gonna vote
Yeah.
against it.
Next year,
Not that don't think it's a good project, but,
but to get it listed as a capital project, that means next year after town meeting.
yeah, it's, it's a side road. Nobody's in danger if it's a little bumpy for a year.
How much are we saving by doing it at the same time as the contractor is there? Like, in other words, what does that save in terms of price? What do you think?
I think a
Couple grand,
couple
probably?
grand, gotta truck all the machines in. And
But you're not gonna have a cold joint. I mean, it's never as good to have someone, you wouldn't have someone come pave half your driveway and then come in and do the other half.
My driveway's half paved and half gravel, so I guess I would. but-
Mine's all gravel.
All right.
Oh, we have two.
So Spring Street isn't even on here.
Yeah, it's together with Kendall.
Kendall Speed is
It's
right.
number 3. And it's tied with Bullard.
This here?
We don't have to pay for Old Street. Nobody lives on that street. So it's really all the state roads, actually, that are the worst condition.
Well, Old Orchard Road and
Yeah,
Hollow
Orchard.
Street, I think.
What's the one
Oh,
that?
Hunting's
In my
the worst.
assessment.
Hunting Lane,
Hunting's the worst.
Yeah,
one.
Hunting
terrible.
Lane's-
Yeah, it is, but it's gonna cost a lot of money to fix
Yes,
it
it
too.
is.
Never updated.
So the difference between the lists that we talked about was Son Street isn't on the first page, at least I don't see it. And Old Orchard is on the first page, but it's number 7.
And Farm Road is 20.
Farm Road is number 6 on your list, number 20
Did they give you a copy of this?
on that
I
list.
just gave, I have a copy.
The other thing is that this one says that you wouldn't chip seal the first 6 of them. They look like they're all supposed to be rebuilt.
Yeah, grind.
But I think if we can get away with not rebuilding them, that's much better, isn't it? And I think that's part of what's driving the Coolidge Kendall Speen is because we can, John's view is we can get away with not rebuilding them, not grinding them.
What about these 3 streets that aren't on your list? Bullard, Hunting, and Western.
And Brush Hill.
Are those,
What's that, the Bullard Street? What was the other one?
Well,
Bullard,
on his-
Hunting,
his
Brush,
list
and Western.
here is- Yeah, this is from fall of 15. Bullard, Hunting, Brush Hill.
Hunting Lane's gonna cost you a lot of money to rebuild that road.
That's what it says, yeah.
Bullard Street could just be an overlay. And Western Ave wasn't done too long ago, but the short end of Western Avenue was probably the worst part of Western Avenue.
it says Whitney to TL.
That was probably done
It's a town
just
line.
before Ed came, so that's still got a couple more years life in it.
In a couple of minutes, David, I better go see.
Well, I mean, I'm comfortable that, Coolidge, Kendall Speen is the next in priority, and that's the amount we've got the money for, so, I suggest we give John the go-ahead to start the planning on it. And then we can decide, once we've got the other money available to us, and you can have a chance to review this and see if things have changed.
Yep.
Yeah, so John, you're talking about just doing an overlay, right, on these, not a grind?
No. On Coolidge Street?
Yeah, Coolidge, Kendall Speen?
No, we did full reclamation years ago, so that has a great base in that road.
So the pricing is different, because what we've got here, it says if you were to grind and pave Coolidge, it's 197, and then Kendall Speen is 102, so that's your 300.
Yeah, but that's a
Yeah.
couple of years ago, it was bid.
So now we're gonna get the same price to just pave and not grind?
Well, they
Well,
haven't-
we're not. See, all he did was take the grind pave and split it. But when you actually don't grind, you're gonna shim. So
Right.
there's some work in there that's not captured, the way he did that.
Okay. All right, so the 300 becomes 400.
Because you're not just paving
We're
one and a
getting it at
half.
300, is that what you're saying?
Well, those are a couple of
know
years
where-
ago's prices.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Year and a half
Right.
ago, about a little more, yeah, 2 years ago.
So do you have estimates for?
You got this in front of you?
No, he just came in Monday, the
Yeah, but-
gentleman, and he hasn't got back to me with the pricing.
No, but, I mean, just some idea of how, even at the current prices? would-
Well, I know what the current price of hot top that they put
Right.
down is.
So, I mean, we've got 197,000, includes grinding for Coolidge. But if we were to just pave it,
It'll probably be a little cheaper,
a little, just a little,
a lot cheaper,
a lot cheaper,
a lot cheaper.
like 75,000.
I don't think it'd be that
It's an
much,
old
but
number.
All right, well, I'm just,
I mean, Coolidge was
Work with me
122
here.
2 years ago. It was 122 2 years ago.
I know. Okay.
I just feel like you're grinding up the road where you really don't have to. I mean, so,
All right, so
That's fine.
we've got one motion on the table, which is Woodhaven. And then we've got two other things we're considering doing here.
just for example, the town of Dover pays roads every year. They never grind their roads.
Their roads are pretty
They're
good shape.
beautiful, so,
Yeah,
because
they
they
are.
spend the money on hot top instead of grinding.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think what I'd really like an answer tonight, if you're gonna go with Woodhaven or not, because the
Yeah.
contract is getting close to coming in,
We got a
so.
motion on the table here. Any more discussion on that one?
Just to summarize, it's been recommended, it has coordination, it services three developments, Abbey Road, Woodhaven, and Leland Farms. Hasn't been done in a while, we're gonna have to do it sooner or later.
Mhm.
We've been talking about making it a public road for at least 10 years that I can recall. There's never been an article to do that. It has to go to town meeting, so it couldn't be done this year. It would have to be put off for future years. So I would say, let's do it.
You had a thought on that, George? Yeah.
Voted at town meeting. We had split in between 160 and of the 450. 160 was coming from free cash as the Kickstarter for the Chapter 90, and the other 290 was designated for projects that wouldn't necessarily be for Chapter 9. It was like extra capital for road improvements. That was kind of the way that because we split it.
To make up for all the years of
The
neglect.
160 was really for the Kickstarter of Chapter 90.
Okay.
That was just how we wrote our recommendation on the House Advisory wrote the recommendation at town meeting. and
So in
that's
your
why
view, we
we
have
split
another
it.
290 to play with?
Yeah, the 160 was to kickstart Chapter 90 earlier in the year, and the 290 was for
To try to get more projects
to
done.
get ahead of more of the roads.
Well, just for another example, Cemetery Lane's not a Chapter 90 road. And that road's falling apart down there.
We just spent a lot of money at town meeting on the cemetery.
I know.
Well, that's on the cemetery itself from the gates forward. Cemetery Lane goes from 27, services the tennis courts, the ball fields, the playground, and all of you people that just watched it, I hope you paid attention to the condition of Cemetery Lane, not the cemetery.
It was a great place to march.
Carefully,
Potholes.
carefully.
Carefully, yeah. All right, so
I just don't think the savings are worth taking it out of order on, we've got a plan, we ought to stick to it.
But it's not on the list.
All right, so let's get the road accepted, let's get it on the list, and let's do it then, if it's deemed to be that important. I mean, we've got other ones on here. For 20 grand, we could also do that, are pretty high on the list.
Well, I'm supporting this because it's opportunistic. In other words, sometimes things come along that seems like the right circumstances come together to do it. You've got the recommendation from the guy we're relying on, and you got the contractor there. And it's also, I feel, a fiduciary duty to the people in Woodhaven. There are tenants, if you will, and Abbey Road is up and running, and it's a nice development in town. It's going to be paying a lot of taxes to the town. It should have a decent road going in. So for all those reasons, it seems like a nice opportunistic thing to do.
Okay, all in favor of the Woodhaven paving? Okay. Opposed? Okay, all right. So now we've got to get something going on Coolidge, Kendall, and Speen, or some combination of those. I mean, I think we've heard from enough people that Coolidge Street needs to be done. It's number 2 on the list behind Washington Street that we already did.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to do Coolidge and not do Speen at least, which is, just a little dot on the end of Coolidge. Kendall, maybe there's a rationale to save money on Kendall because it doesn't really support a lot of.
There's a couple
residents.
rationales for Kendall. One, it's got the highest truck traffic in town,
Yeah,
the highest count, which means it takes the biggest beating. It's also a safety hazard when the edge of that road falls apart, because we peel cars out of the field.
Is it falling apart?
Yeah,
You gotta
it's
do that.
constantly falling apart.
Yeah.
And it's a dangerous corner. And when it becomes a more dangerous corner in the winter, because they can't plow the edge of the road, the cars end up on their side in the field. So, it's a safety concern.
Okay.
And it fits the bill with a road that if you don't take care of it, it costs more money to fix later.
So I'll move that we do Spring, Kendall, and Coolidge as recommended, and in accordance with what Sean had to say, and in accordance with the plan that we prepared last year.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of that?
Hold on,
Rich,
let's
you
just,
want
I don't want to amend it, but I want to make sure that we somehow try to coordinate it with Natick's. Maybe we can catch the tail end of Natick once they open their, if they're ahead on their construction, we might catch it. Because none of us want to see that getting done, at least the finish coat, while the truck exclusion's open in Natick.
Agreed.
So,
So if we bid it, we've got to bid it for the time when Natick's going to be done already. I guess, schedule it for a time when Natick's.
Hopefully.
We can put the bids right out, get a package together and put them out right away.
And then just schedule them for after Natick's done.
And I'll let you know when the difference of the two bids.
Yeah? Good.
And what happens, so it's going to be a couple months, between that time. What happens if the price of the materials drops again? Do we get the benefit of that?
If you put it in the contract, you can do that, if you put the wording in there.
We only want it if it drops.
Yeah, the problem with
Just
asking
to be
for
clear.
that is, if you say market value at the time of the construction, it could be higher.
Okay.
You gotta remember, when you do a road project, the details are built into this price too, so all that comes out of there. There's a lot, manholes, catch basins, so
Yep.
it's not just paving, it's a little bit of everything goes into these projects.
Okay. All right, so all in favor of those three? Okay, good.
Can I just ask one related
Decide
question?
something, please.
Would you recommend any geometric changes to the intersection there between Coolidge, Spring, and Kendall? Is there anything that would make it safer?
I wouldn't recommend it. Years ago, we never had that island down there. There's a stop sign down there now, so, unless you put a roundabout in there, but that's gonna delay everything and see what you try to do, what you're doing up West Golden now, is try to slow the traffic down, which in my personal opinion was a good idea. The trucks coming around the corner, so you just want to slow everybody down a little bit is what you're doing.
It's really that downhill off of Kendall onto Coolidge. where
Yeah, you get a
people-
lot of trucks come
Get
from
trouble.
Odessa, so that way,
Yeah.
so.
Well, it's just, if we're gonna make any changes to the intersection, it'd be good to do it before we repave it. That's supposed to really my question.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend any of this time, because I really wouldn't. Unless, I'm not on traffic safety, unless they have any ideas.
I don't know if they've taken that up at all at this point. Elliot used to be an advocate for doing a three-way stop sign there. Right now, the problem is
Well,
there's
three-way,
only one stop sign and nobody really knows who goes
yeah,
through.
so a three-way stop sign wouldn't interfere with the paving.
Right.
So we could go ahead with the paving, and why not ask traffic safety to take a look at a second stop sign or a third stop sign?
Yeah,
see if
whether
it
that
makes
makes
a difference.
sense, yeah. Okay, all right, so we voted that too. Great. John, thank you very much.
Okay, anything else?
Yeah,
or
I'd just
else?
like to publicly say thanks for stepping up.
No problem.
How the director's been out and handling this. We really appreciate it.
It's not my first time, it's probably fifth or sixth, so.
Yeah.
Nonetheless,
And I'll echo that and also encourage people to go out and see the corner of Goulding and Woodland, which is now improved over the last 3 weeks. It was a slow start, but once it got started, it got done pretty quickly, and it looks really nice. It's a new.
I mean, we're getting there. I was just handed that a couple of weeks ago.
No, I'm saying it's a slow start because it was like 3 years in the making to even get it to you.
Right, but I just want to tell you that our department was just handed that. probably
Understood, yes.
3 weeks ago. at
Right,
the
as soon as
latest, at the
Verizon got
earliest.
done with their work,
Yeah.
yeah, you guys jumped in, it was great.
Well, it's not just us. The traffic safety helped out, and all the guys in our department. they all pitched
Details,
in. So
oh,
it's
yep.
it's a combination of everything, so.
Well, thank you.
Before he leaves, we had one more thing for him. So there's a tree in the parking lot. While they were doing the library plans, this time last year, it was completely defoliated from the caterpillars, and then it came back. But I spoke with Alex Staus, because we were in a meeting last week, and I know John has spoken with our tree warden, and the tree is dying. It's only got a couple years left. It's got dead limbs on it now, and they're in the process of finishing the loop
Yeah.
extension. So I'll hand it over to John, but I know that John already had a price to remove it. The contractor offered to rip the stump out. That's the contractor that's doing the site work already. And we would gain the 3 spaces that we lost by having it there.
Yeah.
So I'm not intending to take the tree down because of 3 parking spaces, but soon after they pave, we're gonna be taking the tree down because the top limbs are gonna fall on someone's car. It's a
Right.
safety concern right now. So
Yeah, and we just looked out the window.
much more timely to just
Yeah, it was
have it
recommended by
removed
the-
right now while
by
they're
the-
doing site work.
It's recommended by the tree warden. It's probably 2 or 3 years.
What's the price on that one? Just a couple thousand, or?
I got a price between that one and this pine, so I didn't know we were going to talk about this tonight. So I know both of them are probably like, I don't know, did I give it to you like 2,700 maybe for
Yeah,
2
it
trees?
was less than $5,000.
Yeah.
Well, I would hope so for just 2 trees, but yeah.
So that's a big tree.
It is a big tree.
It's bigger than you think.
Yeah,
Now
okay.
that's not going to last much longer either. This pine tree out here. So.
I agree. It's also in a terrible spot.
Yeah, I mean, I'd go for both, but I have a specific reason for the timing on that one.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Okay. And what
So-
budget is that coming out of, David?
CM&D.
Tree removal?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've got a budget for that.
There's a line item in the CM&D budget.
Okay, fine,
Yeah.
fine. I just want to make sure we're not spending road money on a tree, but if it's,
No, no,
but
no,
if it's
no, no.
CM&D,
No, it's
tree removal
CMD
money.
operation.
No, that's not a Chapter 90 road around.
No, I understand that, but I mean, even our rest of our road money.
We could make our driveway a Chapter 90 road.
Yeah, I bet some towns do.
Well, the old road used to be over there where you live.
All right, so,
I'll move that we remove that tree.
okay,
ASAP.
both of them, Sean, or just the one?
We should do both.
David wants
If
to
you want
vote on
the-
this
If you
one,
want the
too.
case for the pine tree, it's doing detrimental harm to the building.
I would be in favor of removing that pine tree for exactly that reason, and just based on where it is. It's not
And then
the
we have a
right,
tree
it's not the
crew.
right place to have a, however tall that is, white pine.
Right. And it restricted their access when they built the handicap ramp. Someday we need to fix it, the tree's gonna need to go anyway. And there's gonna be a tree crew and a crane here set up to do it. Should just let them do both at the same time.
So I'm in favor of both.
All right, do we have a motion?
Motion.
Second? Okay, all in favor of that? Great, good. Boy, we
Thanks,
spent a
John.
ton of time on trees. All right, we gotta move on, we gotta move ahead. We're really getting behind, and we got a bunch of people here for interviews, so, and I apologize to the first candidate, because we're already late. We won't cut into your time, though, we'll just push everything back a little bit. So consideration of rescinding the 2003 Board of Selectmen vote that rejected Chapter 59, Section 2D. This would allow the town to capture increased property values through supplemental assessments. What it would really allow us to do is, as of, the taxes in town for fiscal 17, fiscal 18, which are your bills you're going to get in November and upcoming November, upcoming May, are for fiscal 18, but they're based on assessed value as of January 1. So what this would do is, this would allow the tax bills to be based on the actual value of those properties if they've increased by more than 50% since January 1. The way I would propose to do this, we would not do it in a retroactive way. We would not, I think the law would allow you to issue supplemental bills looking backwards. In other words, issue a new bill for May from the May taxes for the second half of 17 to take account of changes during the second half of 17, but I would not recommend we do that. I think that it cuts into people's certainty about their tax bills, and there have been transactions and other things that were entered into with an expectation of what the 2017 tax bills would be. So what I would propose, and what the purpose of this item was, is to follow up on what was discussed by advisory during the budget season and allow us to take advantage of taxing new development that has been increased in value since January 1 at its usual assessed value, rather than looking at the January 1 date when it might have been vacant land or not improved. So that's the proposal.
Let's say that back in 2003, when this came before the board voted it down based on the recommendations of the Board of Assessors and the town's various financial officers, because the cost of doing this and keeping track and making these new assessments and all this stuff was going to be a considerable burden. So they had, both the Board of Assessors and others had asked the board not to impose this burden on them. That's why it got voted down. So I don't know if anything's changed between then and now, but if it can be done without a lot of added costs to our current staffing, then there's a lot of sense to it. But if it's going to cost more than it's going to benefit us, then it doesn't. So I hope we hear from somebody from the Board of Assessors to tell us the cost-benefit analysis on this.
I don't know if anybody's
We
here.
don't
from
have an
the Board of
assessor here, do we? Can I ask a question about that, or
Yeah,
even
sure.
make a comment?
Go ahead.
If we're only capturing the 50% increases, that means we're only capturing the new certificate of occupancies, or absolutely mammoth additions. That's not, and those assessments happen anyway. We're not increasing the work on the assessor, because they do that assessment.
It's just
It
that
just
they
doesn't
can't-
take effect until the next
They can't charge
tax
it for
year.
another year, yeah.
We're legally obligated to do that assessment when the C of O gets signed off.
Should I
When we
proceed?
discussed this
Because anybody else wants to
advisory,
have
this
one use,
during
and
budget
nobody else
season,
can use.
the idea was with something like Abbey Road or some of these bigger projects, if they come online between January and June, then we'd like to be able to capture that revenue in the fiscal year that may affect, say we get a 40B that has a bunch of students coming in and we're going to need additional costs that I know that following the school year, but then we have to wait another year to capture the revenue from that tax revenue. It makes sense to match it up with the year that you're going to package up the revenue with the year that you're going to see increase of occupancy. So that's why I think it makes sense to be able to send supplemental, especially as Sean said, it's really only on projects that are showing large, it's not if somebody changes their kitchen or somebody finishes their basement, it's for when you see a large increase in value on this property. I think when we're looking, not even so much at somebody doing a renovation of a house, but a larger 40B project that could cost the town a lot of money on the expense side, and have to be able to capture the revenue side at the same time.
Jim?
Okay, I am here representing Abbey Road Development on this issue. I'm glad to hear that there's not any intention to go back retroactively in 2017, because we have had 8 closings already in which we've adjusted all these things, and all the planning has been done for all those things. So it would really be extremely burdensome if we do something this way. It would be quite a bad welcome to the town to have to reallocate taxes to new owners. On the complicated side, though, I don't know that you completely solve the problem. And I'll give you an example for 2018. For this property was made up of 4 tax parcels. And we have received so far 12 COs out of 18. some other parcels, and where the lots are not exactly the same. So it is gonna be a very tricky assessment for our particular property. It may not be the same if you had a subdivision of 25 homes, that would be quite easy to do. But because of the way ours is, it is going to be a quite complicated process because of what dates you're going to pick out. For example, we got COs on January 3rd, January 18th, February 16th, and March 28th, each of them for 3. So it's where, and some of those units are on one parcel, and some of the units are on another parcel. The library doesn't have a CO yet, it was on a second parcel. That one, when it gets a CO, that's the easiest one to do. But all the other ones are quite complicated. So I don't know whether or not it's possible to incorporate some consideration of that issue in what you're trying to do globally. But it is something that is still quite complicated.
So these are not taxed as condo units, they're taxed to the parcel?
This did not become condominiums in January 5th
Mm-hmm,
of 2017.
yeah.
So we're, right now, the only tax bills that we received for the period ending June 30th, 2017, we received 4 separate tax bills, and they were directed to the existing owner and the former owner in Maine. And we don't really know what's going to happen for November bills. But what would be, I think, probably appropriate was the units that we sold, that those individual condominiums get their own individual condominium bill. Those individual units pay their own individual bill.
That's what this would do is, if those were after January 1st, if not, it would still be another tax bill from, because as of January 1st, the work was still in the corner condo. So the town's gonna have to wait yet another year.
I know, but I'm gonna tell you, as of January 1st, there's still word condos if they're.
But I'm saying, since they become condos since then, the tax bill for November should be on condominiums because they're completed at this point.
12 out of 18 condos have COs. That happened between January and March. 6 don't. And we just, all I'm saying is that I don't know whether or not they have the assessments at each of those moments in time. And if in fact what you're saying is that there should have been an assessment on January 1st, there should have been an assessment done on January 3rd, 18th, February 16th, March 28th, for 3 each to figure out what those are. And then we also have to adjust it based upon the day of conveyance. So we can put a CO on March 28th, or we can convey it to somebody who's April 15th. Then we have a pro rata adjustment issue too. So it is a.
That's an adjustment issue because of how you organized your business, so that has nothing to do with this supplemental.
No, but the supplemental also, what the supplemental does do is it triggers it, as Sean said, on COs. Okay? But the law is somewhat confusing about COs, so we don't have CO for all of our property on each of the parcels. And we don't have a complete CO for our parcel. We have
So
some.
the issue is you have parcels, whereas you want to tax the condominium.
Right, we have four parcels right now. I don't know whether or not the assessors have yet established a map lot block for each of our condominiums which we closed on.
I guess what I'm saying, Jim, I mean, from hearing what you're describing, I think it'd be the same whether we were picking up the increased value or not. You've got a mismatch between the people who are living in condo units and the fact that as of January 1, there were individual parcels. I don't know that that's an argument for the town not capturing that increased value. It's just a question of how you and the owners are going to allocate that.
No, I agree with you that it is an existing issue no matter what happens and what we
Yeah.
decide. All I was trying to spotlight a little bit was that it isn't a very easy process for the assessors. And so that it is going to have a cost effect for the assessors to do this in the interim period. And you do capture you will capture for some of these units an extra year of tax. We have to figure out whether or not the extra cost to the assessors to do all the extra work they have to do is going to be sufficiently offset.
Last question, but can you go, say, it's this time of year, June 15th, June 30th, it's the end of fiscal year 17, you then go and look what COs have been issued between January and now that have shown these increased values, because we're not going to retroactively, as you said, you don't retroactively go back and charge them more since January 3rd. It's that for fiscal year 18, you're not basing it on the January 1st value, you're basing it on the June 30th value. You're saying today.
That's right, that's right.
For the
Yeah, exactly.
following year, we should be taxing it what it's worth today, not what it was worth January 1st.
Yeah, because we're not looking backwards, it doesn't matter when exactly you got those COs.
17, that's done, you've already collected the taxes.
For the future 6 that you're talking about that are going to roll out over the next 6 months, that'll be complicated, but the ones that have already happened,
I do agree that the ones that have already been sold, if they are taxed, the November bill, based on, as if it's just their one parcel, then that seems like what they should be expecting. And that's exactly what we told them. We told them that it's likely that the assessment in November will be reflective of the value that we paid, close to it, however the
Right,
assessors
okay.
vary. And what we definitely didn't tell them that there was any potential there was going to be a retroactive for 17. So I'm very glad
I don't
to
think anybody's
hear that
suggesting
part.
that, right?
but the statute would allow you to do that, but my recommendation is that we not vote to do that. We vote to do it only prospectively. That's my
Well,
recommendation.
as of this beginning for fiscal year 18.
Does anybody else have comments, Jeff?
Question, Jim. So actually, I think I hear what you're saying, right? At least the property tax for the common space there, with the condo associated with use. In other words, if I'm taxed for my unit, that doesn't include the common space in the building. So would it be a separate tax bill for the common space? I'm assuming your 12 are.
No, what happens is as each unit owner gets, like, so we have 18 units, say, so
Yeah.
each person has to pay 5% of the common area, so that.
Real estate, I don't think the condo associated, correct me if I'm wrong, they don't get a tax bill themselves, I think it's split between 18.
We don't really have to solve this for
Right.
this particular development, do we?
No,
Okay.
please don't.
It's more that, like I said, I think what you're expecting, the things that have been come online between now should, in fiscal year 18, but now, right, the way it's written now, you wouldn't be able to capture that until fiscal year 19.
Okay. Anybody else with comments on this? Anybody on the board have comments on this? Do you want to take a vote or make a motion?
Well, just a comment that I'm going to vote for it based on what George had to say, but I was there for the presentation back in 2003, and there was this cost-benefit analysis that was made that it cost something, and at that time, the amount of development in the town, I guess, wasn't as great, and they felt it was too costly to do that. And I'm a little disappointed that there's been no analysis done of the cost-benefit today. But based on the fact that Abbey Road is coming online, and that we have all these projects that are confronting the town, the 40B stuff and everything else, it seems intuitively correct that we would do better with adopting this thing. So I'm going to vote in favor of it. My comment only was in terms of the homework here. It would have been nice to have that analysis.
John?
I'd like to move. You ready?
Yeah.
I'm going to move that we rescind the September 23rd, 2003 vote that rejected the Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 2D.
Okay.
Can you
I
take
believe
a
you mean
friendly
chapter
amendment?
50.
What's that?
Did you take a
Reading
friendly
them.
amendment?
In,
This is
make it
50.
perspective.
Make it
Yeah.
perspective.
No, let's make sure we got the right one.
Oh, 50 or 59? Anyone know?
59D.
59?
This is 50 down here.
59.
59 2D.
59 2D.
Yeah.
Well,
And the friendly amendment is to make to allow
Perspective.
prospective assessment. I mean, that's up to the assessors, I guess, but that's our recommendation, perspective. Okay, is that a friendly amendment?
Sure,
Okay.
accepted.
Do this, but you're saying the motion to tell the Department of Revenue beginning of fiscal year 2018.
Instead of same perspective, sure.
Well, the problem with that wording is that based on what George said, we want to pick up the Abbey Road specifically development that came online in 17.
I know, but if it's based upon,
And not have
That
to
would be
wait-
for the 18 bill.
We're looking,
That would be for 18.
For the tax year fiscal year.
it's for the tax year. We don't want to get
We want 18, we don't want 17.
Right, okay. So that's your motion, is to accept, to reverse, what did you say? I'm sorry.
To rescind the September 23rd, 2003 vote.
Okay. Rescind the September 23rd, 2003 vote to allow capture of increased value starting in fiscal 18.
That's exactly my
Okay.
motion,
All right.
as long as someone wrote that down.
Starting with the fiscal 18 bills, that's it. All right, all in favor of that? Okay. All right, so with that, we got something done. Let's put off the Board of Selectmen minutes. Let's move to the interview process. Do we need a break first before we start this, or? Good? You're good? Okay. So our first interview candidate would be, is that? Paul Keene. Okay. Is Paul here? You are? Okay, great. Paul, do you want to come up to the table, please? David, no Chuck? We haven't heard from Chuck. Paul's house? Paul's house?
It'd be much better to have a full board in this.
No kidding.
'Cause there's only 3 of us.
I know. We'll have the town administrator do that.
The process to get us to here, we first advertised an interim CM&D director position, and then there were discussions about combining the CM&D position with a buildings facet. The selectmen approved a job description, personnel board approved the job description. We posted that job description. We had a due date by May 11th. By May 11th, we had 42 applicants. About a third of them were qualified, and another third had various different skills. And then there was about a third that didn't even realize what job they were applying for, because it's through monster.com. So we continued to get applications after May 11th, and we had about 15 of those. And again, maybe 4 or 5 of those had the qualifications we were looking for. But the first pool was adequate enough, and there were 5 or 6 that stuck out to us that were definitely the highest ones that had specific town engineer or public works or operational experience. And we reviewed, or I pulled a team together and notified them that we were going to get together and use a grid scoring system. But then because we wanted to expedite, because we weren't doing, assigning or appointing an interim, and I was asked to bring 4 people back, I scheduled the interviews with the top 4. Top 5 people are included in your packet. One person couldn't make it to the interview tonight, so we have 4 interviews scheduled tonight. The first one being Paul Keene.
Just some follow-up questions on that. I thought I saw in your report to the board that you didn't get to read all the resumes, and I wonder what that meant.
No, I don't know what, you gotta show me where that says that.
Well, let's ask it this way. Did you get a chance to read all the resumes?
Of course I did. Yeah, so I don't know where it says that or what I wrote. The first round is what I focused on. The ones that had applied by the due date of May 11th.
Paul, I think what you're talking about is there, David's memo to the Board of Selectmen says he received 42 applicants that were timely applications, and since that date, another dozen or so have come in. Those are in a pool of applicants to review only if needed. But that, in the first pool, there were qualified candidates, and they had timely submittals. So that's I think, what he's talking about. I think we should move forward and
Well, it's the next one that says, due to timing circumstances, I was not able to review all resumes.
with the volunteers I pulled together to assist.
I was trying to understand. So,
With the timing, I couldn't pull the volunteers together.
so which, in that sentence, are you talking about the 42, as Mike has
It
suggested?
doesn't matter in that instance. I had a team that you had said that I could pull together, and they were going to be an advisory team. I didn't have time to meet with them. I only had time to talk to individuals and distribute the resumes to a few individuals to advise me. And you asked me to bring 4 names back, and that's what this is.
So I
Okay.
think we should interview the people we've invited here to interview today.
Agreed.
Okay, all right. So we've got Mr. Keene, Mr. Paul Keene, and if you wouldn't mind, just briefly introducing yourself, telling us, your background, et cetera. The folks in the audience won't have seen your resume, so.
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much for this opportunity to come here tonight. Again, my name is Paul Keene. I live in East Walpole, Mass. I've been in public works, municipal engineering, and private sector engineering, land development for a number of years. My career is about equally divided. I currently serve as the city engineer for the city of Gloucester, Massachusetts. I previously served as Director of Public Works, Town Engineer for the town of Walpole, and Commissioner of Public Works, Town Engineer for the town of Dedham. I grew up in Dedham. My father was with DPW in Dedham for 38 years, and I've sort of followed in his footsteps. I have a diverse experience in public works. In Walpole, our department handled everything from roads and trees and vehicle maintenance, building maintenance, water and sewer, also engineering, advising all town departments, and particularly the boards such as Planning and Board of Appeals, Conservation Commission. In Dedham, as Commissioner of Public Works, Town Engineer, I had similar responsibilities except for water. That was a separate Dedham Westwood Water District. And in Gloucester, my experience is primarily in capital projects and permitting, reviewing submissions to various city boards and advising different departments. In the private sector, I've done a lot of development work with residential, commercial, and industrial projects all over eastern Massachusetts, which has given me an opportunity to interact with municipal officials in this part of the state, and I've had an opportunity to see how different communities operate, what their regulations are, what their priorities are. Again, I think I have all the qualifications that you were looking for in your advertisement. I think I bring a diverse experience to the table, and I think I'm well qualified to fill this position, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and we'll have some questions. Do you want to go first, Paul?
I don't have standard questions, but I was on the town's planning board in the 90s, and I think I had occasion to work with you in connection with Cider Hill development.
Yes, with Sharon Wasson as the planner?
Yes.
Yes.
And we had a developer who was bankrupt or going
Right.
bankrupt, the bank had stepped in and we needed to figure out what needed to be done. And my recollection, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we hired you, or the bank hired you. Someone hired you. And
Yeah, I think the town hired me based on Sharon's recommendation. I had worked with her in the town of Walpole. She was the chairman of the planning board then. And my role was to inspect the end of, I believe it was Cedar Hill, see what needed to be done to complete the work and how the bond was going to be captured to pay for that work. And to be honest with you, I don't recall how it came out in the end. It was a while ago, but that was the project.
so I have had occasion to work with you a little bit, but it's a long time
A long
ago.
time ago, yeah.
My other question is, you're up in Gloucester,
Yes, sir.
and when you were up for reappointment, Joe Orlando had real reservations about reappointing you.
Yes, he did.
And I wonder if you would tell me your side of the story on that one.
Sure. Mr. Orlando and I had some difference of opinion when he was building his home and what it was going to take to get a sign-off so that he could get his certificate of occupancy. And I thought it had been resolved amicably. I met with him and his father, and we spent a lot of time with his engineer trying to resolve the issue. It was a drainage problem. Gloucester has a lot of very small lots, so a lot of homes get built, and it creates issues. So they have an ordinance that I haven't seen any other place that for any project that requires a building permit that has a footprint of 500 square feet or larger, the applicant has to get a grading and drainage plan approved, and that's through my office. And we had done that, and we had worked out a plan and thought it was all amicable, but unfortunately, the contractor he hired to do the work didn't follow the plan. The second contractor he hired to correct what the first guy did didn't follow the plan. And it took us 3 people, or it took him to get a third contractor to fix things so we could sign off.
But he felt that you were, well, let me withdraw that. Why do you want to leave Gloucester?
For 2 reasons. One, the obvious one, is the commute. But more importantly, as I told Mr. Williams in our phone interview, I really want to get back to public works operations and management and have more of a broader role than reviewing plans and permits, which is mostly what I do now, and get back to, I think, what I'm good at, and that is not only looking at the big picture and organizing things, but also getting down into the weeds where necessary and get things done. And I think I'm very good at that.
One of the advantages and disadvantages of a small community is that if there are 100 tasks to be done, you don't have 100 people each doing one of those tasks. You
Right.
end up in a community like this pretty much doing everything, not just reviewing plans, but out on a snowplow truck when we're shorthanded, or actually rolling up your sleeves and moving a election machine, things like that. Do you feel that you can, would that be a shock to come from a big city to a small little town where you'd be both chef and bottle washer?
Well, no, not all. I mean, I came up in that sort of environment. Walpole, quite honestly, Sherborn now reminds me of Walpole when I first went there and started out. Walpole has become much more commercialized now, but it was pretty much a rural community as you are. You know, there was still some active farms in town when I started there. So no, I wouldn't have a problem doing that, and I've done it. And as I've said to the workers in all the departments that I've ever managed, is there's nothing that I ask you to do that I haven't done myself or would be willing to do myself. So, you know, I've done everything from cut grass, shovel snow, plow snow, patch potholes, clean sewers, build catch basins, bury people in the cemetery. I've done all that. And I understand what's involved. And I understand what limits should be put on a person based on available equipment and safety and all those other issues. The one thing I would push back on a little bit, just to be really fair and honest with you, is if you're driving that snowplow, you can't manage the overall operation. I have driven the snowplow. I've done it. I have no problem doing it. Matter of fact, it's fun sometimes to do it. It's not fun to do it for 36 hours, and I've done that too. But if you want a manager, then you should expect that manager to manage, to see the big picture, to address problems and fires as they come up, and I think I'm good at that. I have no problem being on call. My first 2 years in Dedham, I was on call 24/7 by myself because we had no other person available. And I'll do it. I'm glad to do it. But I don't think that should be the focus. And if you're looking to hire another foreman to help John, that's fine. But that's not me. If you're looking for a manager that will work with John and work to communicate with the board and with the town administrator and with citizens and residents, and to help organize things and try to get the right resources in the right place at the right time, that's me. And I'm happy to do it, and I will work diligently to do it for you. And I'm not a clock watcher. I don't wear a watch. So I hope I answered your question.
You did, thank you.
Mark, you have any?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for coming in.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
And you sort of answered this a little bit, but I may like to go a little deeper, because, you know, obviously the technical skills and experience are important, but also equally, or perhaps even more, is the management side of things. And so if you could talk a little bit more about your management philosophy and how you deal with the people that report to you, how you deal with the people that you have to work with. And you know, I think we've got a pretty good relationship with our union, but of course, we can always try and get more efficiency and you know, an even better relationship and get as much service for the town as we possibly can. So if you had an experience with a union, maybe a difficult experience, if you could talk about how you resolved that, I think that would be interesting for us.
I'm glad to do that, and my experience in Dedham was probably quite fraught with the union, because there was a lot of pushback in. When I got hired in Dedham, the first town administrator they ever had was the person who hired me. And I was the first professional director of public works town engineer that they had. And in addition to managing the department in general terms, my number one task was to increase productivity. And there was a lot of difficulty with attendance, and there was a lot of difficulty with substance abuse. And so I went through a lot of very difficult cases with certain individuals that required, in some instances, it was just trying to work with them to get help for their substance abuse. I had another person that had a serious medical issue we tried to do accommodations for. But I had some other people that just, they wanted to check, and that was about it. And we had to deal with that. And some had abuse problems, some just had other other things on their agenda. So I've been through the local grievance process. That has then gone to arbitration and mediation. That has then gone to
We'll take care of that.
Civil Service Commission, and eventually Superior Court. And in all of those instances, there's maybe one or two, and none of the ones that got up to the more difficult, like the court cases. But we prevailed in all of them. And so, my view is, number one, you need to talk with people and communicate with people. It's very important that that the communication be two-way. One of the things I was proud of in Dedham is that we had a union contract that had been so convoluted over the years with side letters and other agreements and past practice that I worked very closely with the union, and we rewrote the entire contract. Every single word got rewritten. All of the past practices were dealt with and either incorporated in the contract or abandoned. They had a practice of you had to have 2 employees in each truck plowing snow, and that dated back to the time of my father, when they didn't have two-way radios, they didn't have cell phones, and if you broke down in the middle of the night, you didn't want a guy by himself. By the time we were rewriting this contract, every truck had a radio and every person had a cell phone, or maybe 2, and there was no need for that. And even and the vehicles were much better than they were back when that agreement. So we got rid of a lot of things. One of the things we did is change the leave time from the standard so many days a year to paid earned leave time. For every hour worked, an employee earned a small amount of time, and that time could be used, didn't matter, sick, vacation, whatever you want to do. The holidays stayed, and then we had short-term extended leave and long-term extended leave that were kind of separated, and that you needed doctor's notes for and things like that. But for the employees that wanted to show up for work every day, it was a great system. And for the people that wanted to abuse it, it didn't work out so well. And so that was among some of the things we did. And again, I hope I answered your question. I mean, I'm glad to go into more detail, but some of them are pretty hairy.
So of the number of, I don't know how big the organization was when you got there, but
35.
and of the 35 who were there when you got there, how many were still there when you left?
17.
One more?
Go ahead, sure. Yes,
You may have heard us discussing this request from Natick to do a detour through our town with the trucks and so on. Yeah, obviously, the director, would be an integral person in helping to make that decision. Sort of walk me through how you would make that decision. What you would consider.
I mean, firstly, I'd want to meet with my counterparts in Natick and understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, why it required this this change in traffic pattern. Certainly want to meet with the town administrator, the police chief, fire chief. If it's going to take place during the school time, then the school superintendent, whatever, whoever would be involved in dealing with the impacts from something like that, and certainly through the town administrator make a recommendation to the board. Typically, when I've seen those done, and I've done them myself, there's a lot of discussion ahead of time. You don't just get an email that says, oh, by the way, on July 1st, we're doing this. That surprised me a little bit when I was listening to you tonight. So the town engineer in Natick and I went to school together, and he took my position in Walpole when I left there, so I can talk to Mark. That's no problem.
So I'll ask a few questions. Can you talk about your experience managing buildings and facilities and systems?
Yes, so in the public sector, when I became the Director of Public Works in Walpole, we had a building maintenance division, and we maintained all municipal buildings, including the schools. The Selectmen controlled all the buildings, and departments, including the schools, were treated like tenants. So we maintained the building, we tried to accommodate people's needs. If a department needed something, then we had our own electricians, plumbers, painters. I even had a cabinet maker that made furniture like your table. It's just, we did a lot of work. So it was a very customer-oriented approach to being like a property manager, and we dealt with all systems. And frankly, I had a very good superintendent in that department that was very good at dealing with that, but I also had to help manage that, particularly the paperwork side and things of that nature. In Dedham, when I first started, they didn't have a facilities manager. So, you know, typically when somebody needs something done, they will call Public Works. And, you know, one call I got one day was that one of the fire stations was a wood frame building, was over 100 years old, and it happened that the second floor came down to the first floor, blocked one of the doors and trapped one of the principal engines in the station. So we had to quickly get somebody in, a contractor, to jack the floor up so the door could be opened, get the engine out, and then you know, hire a structural engineer and an architect to figure out how to support that floor, because there was no intention to replace the building, and it's still being used today. So that was sort of an emergency thing. Eventually, the town did hire a facilities manager, someone who had worked in the schools, but he worked very closely with us because he had no staff, he had no support. So Public Works would, unofficially, we'd work together and deal with whatever we could do to help manage systems. But, you know, typically, we would hire out firms to do the major systems. You know, you'd have somebody doing HVAC, and it got to the point we even contracted out plumbing and electrical and things of that nature. It was just more efficient.
What about capital projects? Were you involved with capital building projects as in that role, or?
Yes. Matter of fact, when I was in Dedham, we did a study that I managed to look at all municipal buildings except the schools, because they wanted to be in their own sphere. But we hired an architectural firm that we went and we interviewed each department. We met with each department, and then we, using our GIS system, looked at multiple scenarios of what did the department feel they need. You know, for instance, what did the police department think a modern police station should be? How big did that end up being? You know, 1-story versus 2-story, and then what municipal land or other land that could be acquired could we find to put this station on? And we actually would try to roughly site the police station with parking, with access, and all those things. We did that for fire stations. We did that for the town hall. We did that for our own DPW facility. So, you know, that was quite a project, and we did go through that and make presentations to the Board of Selectmen and town meeting. You know, of course, nobody wants to spend the money. So if you're familiar with Dedham at all, the police station is right in the center of town. There's no parking, there's no place for the, matter of fact, my brother's a police sergeant there, and he's always complaining about parking, and they just don't have it. And there's no room, the cells are terrible, it's just, it's a tough building. It's similar, you know, I just described one of the fire stations, they're horrible. So, so they really haven't done much, though they are, right now they are doing a, renovating an old school that they had sold like 30 years ago to be town hall, and then supposedly going to knock down town hall and build a new fire headquarters. But that wasn't one of the scenarios we looked at the time.
So were you involved in writing specifications or reviewing specifications, or was it just at the planning stage for these?
For those, it was the planning stage, but we got to the point where we, laid out the buildings, we laid out the space study, but we would have, professional architect write the specs, but I put together the specs for the study and hiring the consultant.
Okay. Changing topics a little bit, have you been involved at all with the stormwater program in your cities and towns, and are you familiar with all the new stormwater mandates?
Yes, that's one of the things our office does in Gloucester. We do the mapping of all the outfalls, and one of the problems I have in Gloucester is that because I'm not involved in operations, so we don't get involved with the cleaning of structures and that sort of thing, but we're on the mapping side and organizing the data. Matter of fact, when I was in Dedham, I did one of the first big GIS projects in the state, and we got a $390,000 grant that the town supplemented with another $500,000 to do mapping of the town, because the town had no good records at the time. And we built out a really robust GIS system. And then when I went to Gloucester 6.5 years ago, we did the same thing. And I think you'd find that our GIS is one of the best in the state now.
Could you talk a little bit about if you've been involved in any, with your personnel management, training and workplace safety and that aspect of management? Have you been involved directly in anything like that?
Yes, and one thing was we sent in Dedham again, all our tree people to safety schools for, handling chainsaws and chippers and all that dangerous equipment, working with the bucket machine. We had our own bucket truck. As I say, we didn't do a lot of underground work ourselves, but yes, safety was a big deal, and we would try to take advantage of either vendor-offered safety programs or whatever programs we could find ourselves or with the state on various aspects of public works.
Okay. Paul or Mark, do you have more?
Just for the record, I should disclose that I have represented the town of Gloucester from the city of Gloucester from time to time.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
a lawyer.
Yeah, I assumed that, but anything recently? I don't recall.
About 4 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Did you have more questions, or
No.
anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'd like to just come back to something we talked about a little bit, but I think it's important. The towns you've worked for are sort of 4 to 5 to 6 times bigger than Sherborn in terms of population. And what do you sort of see as the challenges of coming to a much smaller community? And how do you deal with that?
Well, to be honest with you, I very much look forward to it. I would say Sherborn is, I would guess, very similar to, again, Walpole when I started there. But we had a much bigger public works department. I had 64 people when I started in Walpole. I think they've lost a lot of those folks, but we had a lot dedicated to water and sewer. Gloucester, though, people think it's a big city. It really isn't. It's it's 31,000 people. It's got a big land area. Population grows some in the summer, but it's really just a town. Dedham, very commercial, but it's only 10 square miles, and it had a population when I was there in the low 20s. So none of them are really big cities. As a student, I worked for the city of Boston. That's a big city. But I've also worked in Needham as a student. So I think I'm very much aware of what a place like Sherborn would have in terms of resources. I think your needs, based on the discussion I heard tonight about streets, are very similar to what you see in other communities. I can't tell you how many selectmen meetings I've been at where people are trying to prioritize roads and try to satisfy everybody with a very small bucket of funds. Chapter 90 is not going to do it for any community. And, you know, communities, Gloucester, the last couple of years, been trying to accept roads to get their allotment raised from Chapter 90. The problem is, the bucket is this amount. It just gets divvied up. You know, the state is not adding funds on their end, and that's the big problem.
And do
So-
you use a management system for the road priorities there?
Well, you know, Gloucester did have one done. It was done through the Public Works Department. When I left Dedham, they had one done. I'll be very honest with you, I'm not a big fan of those. You know, engineering firms will come in here, make a pitch to you that we're going to do a pavement management program and prioritize all these streets, and they have beautiful slides, and they do the spreadsheets and everything else. And then when you see the co-op students they send out to actually do the assessments, and then when you look at the slides, go online to any number of communities and just compare one to the next, they're almost all the same. And the recommendations are pretty much the same. You really need to, you know, in looking at roads, look at drainage number one, your foundation number two, and then your surface, and what comprises your surface, and how badly has it been cut up by utility companies, and what you know, if you don't have curbing, you're going to lose the edge with water getting underneath the edge of that pavement. There's a lot that goes into it, but quite honestly, and I have great sympathy for you, there's a lot of money to maintain streets that most communities, matter of fact, I don't think there's any community that has enough. And those priorities are tough. And those priorities are really tough when you try to compare residential streets with your heavily traveled commercial streets or streets connecting between communities. And, you know, I have great sympathy for you sitting here tonight trying to decide how to do that. And it's very, very hard. And there are no simple solutions.
What approach would you recommend for a town like ours?
What we did in Dedham is, and I did a lot of work on capital, you know, not only for buildings, but streets and our sewer system. We had a horrible sewer system. We were the leakiest in the MWRA system, but we improved that greatly. And for our roadway system. We would not get involved with consortium bids that I heard you talk about tonight. We did our own bidding. That way we controlled our own fate. We could put in our special provisions, as you were talking about tonight, trying to avoid this complication with Natick. What we did is we initially, when I was there, we did a couple of projects. We looked at the problems, developed our own cost basis, and we developed a spreadsheet system that went through every street in town. But we had probably 30 items on that spreadsheet. You know, everything from excavation, repairing castings, replacing castings, police details, allowances for utility work, all those things. And then we tried to get a discussion with the selectmen on how much do you want to put towards the commercial business sector, and how much do you want to put towards the residential areas? And how do we do that? And the system we ended up with, and it wasn't perfect by any means, but we took the town, all the voting precincts, and we allotted a certain amount of money to each voting precinct for the residential streets. and then we allotted a certain amount of money for the commercial streets. And, you know, you couldn't do a lot in each precinct. And if you really projected it out, it was going to be decades and decades before you got to the end. So we were still trying to figure out a better way. And the biggest issue is the resources. And Dedham would put the resources. I got $10 million a year in Dedham for all my capital. Now, a lot of that went to sewer, and the sewer was supported by the sewer rates. And so out of that, I could do some road work. If we dug up and replaced the sewer, we would fix the road. Gloucester does that as well now because they have their own sewer and water. When I was in Walpole, I had sewer and water. So you try to leverage what you had. But if you don't have those things and you're basically Chapter 90 and out of your general fund, it is really hard. The only other way to do it is, if you have development, is to leverage those developers, and I have done that. And, you know, to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars gifted to the town that we would then put in our bid and go, you know, fix roads, put in sidewalks, address those things. And because I've worked on the development side and permitting, I'm comfortable dealing with developers and their engineers and getting involved in those negotiations. And, you know, if that opportunity presents itself, I'm all for leveraging that. You got to play with the game you have. But you also have to be mindful of procurement laws, and you've got to do it in the correct way. So one of the projects I had was with Lowe's in Dedham, and they had screwed up on a permit and had messed up a road. And they offered us $283,000 to fix it. And by the time we were done, we got a check, I believe it was for $750,000. Okay, because my estimate was $993,000. And then we played the let's find the middle game. And so, you know, I have no problem having those kinds of discussions with developers and their engineers and contractors.
Okay. Any more questions, Mark?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Paul? Anything more you either wish we'd asked or want to tell us?
Well, again, I would just like you to know I'm very interested in this position. I am very interested in community. I appreciate what you do. You have a beautiful building here. I appreciate that you honor your history with those display cabinets downstairs from the Historical Commission. I can assure you that I would work with you and with the staff and with other departments. I mean, I think I'm really known for doing that. And notwithstanding my issue with Mr. Orlando, I did speak to him several times. So I think communication is the big deal. And if I could just close with a quote from a TV commercial, I don't know if you ever see the Farmers Insurance commercial, but I think I know a thing or two because I've seen a thing or two. I've seen a lot of things. I don't think there's anything that would come up that would surprise me here. It might have a little bit different flavor. That's okay, we'll work it out. Sherborn might have a little bit different flavor, how you like to resolve it. I'll work with you with that. I'm not coming in here with the idea it's going to be my way. I want to work with you to get things done your way and preserve this beautiful community and help you do some improvements. And if I can do that for you, I'd be more than glad to.
Thank you for coming in. Thanks for
Well,
your time.
thank you so much for inviting me. Have a good evening.
You too. Okay, does anybody need a break now, or are we ready to take the next candidate?
Good.
I'm ready to rock and roll.
Ready to go. Okay, so Chris,
Check will not be.
is everything okay?
It's okay, Al.
Okay. Chris Okafor. Yeah. Yeah, what's his name?
Christopher.
Okafor.
Call him by his middle name, just how do you pronounce it? You guys-
Was embarrassing. Mr. Okafor, I'm David Williams, and we talked on the phone.
Yes, good evening. Nice to meet you. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
This is the Board of Selectmen. Mike Jono is the chair.
Hi,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
thank you. This is Paul Durancis and Mark Brandon.
Thanks for coming in.
So we've got, I guess we'll start the same way we started with the last candidate, and just ask you to introduce yourself and describe your background, and then we'll then ask you some questions, if that's okay, but your work history, et cetera. Not, we've seen your resume, but the folks out there have not, so just a little bit of background on yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank the board and for giving me the opportunity to come tonight. My name is Christopher Okafor. I'm currently an instructor at a vocational training school in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. Concerning my career, I've been in public service for over 20 years. I was the public works director for the town of Maynard for 3 years. I was also the highway supervisor for the town of Dartmouth for 6 years. I also the operation manager, which superintendent of operations, City of Norwalk in Connecticut. And my background covers both roads, trees, solid waste, environmental issues, areas of public works. I have managed both from college to where I am today. I've covered roads, highways functions. I've covered land use, public land use, forestry, cemetery, and also recycling and solid waste management. Areas that, including building facilities.
Okay. Very good. Paul, do you want to start with some questions?
Sure. Back in April of 2016, you had applied for a position with the city of Fall River, and the mayor of Fall River revoked the job offer to you and issued a public statement basically but rather than read the mayor's letter here, I want to get your side of the story
Yeah, thank you, Mr.
regarding
Chairman.
that incident.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, as I said, I was in Maynard for 3 years. I was offered the director of community maintenance position in the city of Fall River, and was to commence first week of May 2016. Sometime in April, I had to, while I have already notified my employer at that time, the town of Maynard, I also lost my mother in Nigeria. And then I was, so my starting date was not, the agreement I had with the mayor was not going to be feasible. At the same time, before my getting the appointment, we had, which is currently, we had a political issue in the city of Fall River, which has nothing to do with me. What happened was, we had the current mayor. He just took, he was just, it was a few months, and then he decided to reshuffle the Department of Maintenance. Some people were laid off. The individual who was director at that time was sent to a different unit, kept on the payroll with some demotions in terms of wages and salary. And so he wanted also to privatize the solid waste and recycling program, which many municipalities do today. So when I came on board, the salary range that was advertised for the job was what I went after. But coming to find out that somewhere within the council and the mayor, they didn't agree on that range. But the mayor has already offered me also appointment letter with the range. And so the political issue that was within the town brought about the local reporter who knew me while I was in Dartmouth. And the local reporter began to basically harass me. And so also that same local reporter happens to be someone which has nothing to do with me, but in the case of this job, it's become I found myself in the middle of two giants, both the mayor and the council and this reporter on the different. And so the argument was that this individual has been in the town for over 30 years. The way the mayor is bringing me in, that while I was in Dartmouth, I had some issues with race, and but this reporter did not know the details of the issues with race. And unfortunately, the mayor, for lack of a better word, the mayor was not comfortable. So I left to go and bury my mother. My mother passed away, as I said. So when I came back, I found that the mayor began to ask me different issues to please the reporter. And then people were saying things that have nothing to do with me. But so not to be part of the political crisis, I told the mayor that even if I take this job right now, I will not perform well, because the issue will not be my performance. It will not become political. You hired somebody, even to the point where some people were even putting on the local paper that the mayor is my neighbor, and that the mayor's dad happens to be somebody who have worked for me years ago in Dartmouth. I have never met the mayor from Adam, and I live in New Bedford. The mayor doesn't live in New Bedford. So it became a political crisis. And so so that's what happened in Fall River. It wasn't that I had it wasn't that I had some things in my closet or some criminal background or political entity, but it was just that it became, I found myself that I ran into a storm, political storm, which wasn't of my making. And because of that storm, even till today, the director of community maintenance position is still not filled in Fall River.
Well, wasn't it the fact, though, that the mayor asked you how much you were making at your prior employer, and you said 110,000, and then when the reporter called your former employer, it turns out to be 92,000?
No, that wasn't done. That was not exactly how it went. What happened was, I had 92,500 was my last, plus because of a snowstorm and other emergencies, I also have incentives that they was given to me. So that's just how it came to that amount. And the incentive actually came up. That was how I was even hired. I took the job, but that was how the town was able to work out. because the nature of our job is such that technically I'm on 24/7, and they figure out, okay, in the case of where if we have issues where we have a major crisis or emergencies or snowstorm, like when we had Sandy, or where you have to basically sleep in the town, your rank and file are being paid overtime, but the directors were given incentives. So those were the incentives that brought, even my town administrator, Kevin Smith, spoke to the town about it. But for sensation sake, the newspaper and the mayor was already, so that was what happened. And then it wasn't because there's no way I can lie about my salary. I have been working in public works, and secondly, my career is more important than this kind of stuff. I'm not looking for a job that I cannot do. I'm not looking for a job where you can't make those things up. At my level, or the level of position I'm looking for, you apart from the criminal background, the professional references. For example, I submitted my town administrator, Kevin Smith. If I was somebody who was not responsible, I will not be able to tell you, talk to town of Maynard, talk to my town administrator. Secondly, in a public entity, it's a public record. Anybody can find my salary. So I don't have to, it was just that the newspapers were carrying it, but the problem was I ran into a storm, and I made it easier for the mayor. I could have gone there and continued, but because I'm an outsider, the mayor was not in agreement with certain people on the board and the council, and also become a political issue because when the mayor came up, also, if you recall, Mr. Chairman, Four River has, when I look back right now, I'm very grateful I did not take the job. Four River had 3 mayors in less than a year and a half. And they are still in that situation right now. It's been, but you don't know that when I figured out that my job has nothing to do with political entity. It's just to do, yes, it's the leadership, but come in, focus on your profession. You are in operations, get the job done. But when it became a situation where it became political, even where other leaders of other are leaving the town, I had to remember. I'm also grieving my mother's stuff. I came back. I just left that alone. So the reporter was just using me to make, and because the goal was not to hire an outsider because of within the political entity situation. It hasn't because, and if you look at all that is said, none of them, and there was no place it was written that Chris Okafor wasn't qualified for or wasn't. So that was what happened, Mr. Chairman. It wasn't it just unfortunate situation.
Thank you. I'm going to ask if Mark has any questions on your work background or anything.
Yeah, I think let's maybe shift to actually the running of the operation.
Yes.
And we have a lot about your technical background here, but I think what I'm interested in hearing about is your management philosophy. How do you motivate people? How do you organize your teams? How do you like to treat people? How do you deal with the people you have to interact with? Of particular interest is the union situation. And maybe you could talk about some of your experiences with unions, and then if you have a particular, maybe a difficult situation that you were able to resolve. I'd be interested to hear about that.
Yes, that's true, Mr. Chairman. If you look at in public service, it's a union shop, especially in this area where we're looking to fill. My philosophy is I have a philosophy where team effort, team concept is usually my philosophy. And what does that mean? It means that I value every staff in the department. We're all in the same loop. And also, I also lead by example. What does that mean also? It means that we have a scope of work to do. And so my job is to make sure that scope of work, every individual in the department is recognized. In a public entity, you cannot give merit pay or some recognition, but you can motivate your staff by one, you making sure that they are also, you taking them along with you. And what does that mean? Credit must be given where credit is due, and then where there is need to be for for a chastisement, we discuss it openly together as a team and see how we can better achieve a better product the next time around. Training of my staff is very important, where we all training, you know, so that because that concept where everyone has to be trained. The training may not necessarily mean that the town has to spend exorbitant amount. Even just the fact in-service training or taking advantage of various institutions like the Bay State Roads, like a lot of training by American Public Works Association, a lot of training by in the Commonwealth. Even in the area of forestry, we have a lot of training by the Massachusetts Tree Warning Association. You give them something that they appreciate. You also demand results. And so what does that mean? It means that because we are working in a public entity does not mean that we cannot produce. We must produce. We must have a goal. So we sit down together and have a goal and say, okay, this is a new fiscal year. We just came out of snowstorm, like at this time of the year. Everything's winding down. Now we're going to go into the next fiscal year. These are our goals. We brainstorm on things of last year, projects that weren't complete or where we had some challenges. And the number one of my philosophy is customer service. That regardless of position, customer service is a priority. Getting involved in the union affairs, my job is to make sure, number one, understand the collective bargaining agreement. Understand the CBA, because that is the fundamentals. And also respect to the union staff and the leaders. When there's communication, even when we have issues, it's easily resolved. When there is no, the leadership does not lead by example, there's always a problem. So I do lead by example, team effort, training. Also, because I'm the director, does not mean that I have all the solutions. And that is why input from everyone, because the final goal is to serve the people of Sherborn. It's not for the director to get any accolades, and also to meet requirements. And I find that when we work in team, even when we have challenges, it's easily resolved, and productivity is high because of that concept. And that has been my concept since I've been opportune to serve in various positions.
So when you talk about getting results,
Yes.
what are sort of the when you were at Maynard, what kind of metrics did you use to
Yes,
tell whether or not you were getting results?
Yes, my metrics is very simple because of the nature of public works. Public works, some of the things we do are redundant. Some are predictable. You can predict. Some you also have to think outside the box because of you are limited with budget funds. You also have a lot of responsibility. So you begin by sitting down with the team and say, okay, this is our goal. What's our goal this year? Everybody, then we come up with some, I tell my foremen and supervisors, come up with some list. And I come up with list and we find our goals. For example, this goal this year may be that last fiscal year we did 2,000 potholes. We paved 200 miles of road, or we did 200 feet of sidewalks. This year the goal is to see if we can get to 400. Now we may not get to 400, but we have a goal, a target. Now in the course of that, my job is to also provide the staff, my guys, all the tools they need, encouragement, material, equipment, training, and also discussing with the town leaders on why we need ABCD. If we have to, in the case of the Commonwealth, we experience winter months, some years, the winter months are the intense, some are less, but the fundamentals are still the same. We prepare ahead of the storm, months ahead. So and then we do a lot of training. We do a lot of, we also look at lesson learned from the previous year storm, and then we make adjustments, and that will help us to enhance our production, and help us to plow the road faster or better. What will help us to be able to meet the customers' service demands, because for the community maintenance, the fundamental is customer service. Everything we do is customer oriented. Sweeping the streets, making sure the transfer station is clean and is open at the right time, and the public is well respected. Signage, where signage needs to be. Making sure that we have all the materials ahead of time. Or when a complaint comes in or request, follow through with those requests. And that brings me to the issue of service orders, service requests, where we can, as soon as a call comes in to the department, either for service or for complaint, it's logged in right away, and and this way we know the date, the time, and so we can look at that is complaint or login and see what is needed, and then that will also determine which route to follow. If it's a complaint that it becomes a usual complaint that somebody's recycling is not being picked up properly, or garbage is missed, or someone, the town's truck damaged my sidewalk, or some of the municipal, regardless of the complaint, it's logged in and it's followed through. Or if somebody's requesting for a driveway permit, it's logged in, it's followed through for inspection. So you begin to catalog what you're doing. You also hold someone responsible, because if somewhere along that loop, either me, myself, the foreman, or the other staffs are not doing what they're supposed to do at the right time, you can also look at that. And that also gives you opportunity for discussion, training. Maybe someone needs more information, more training. And so those are how we, and at the long run, be able to achieve more of our goals, meet more of our goals.
Thanks. So this complaint log was something you introduced in Maynard?
Yes.
And then is there some other specific accomplishment you think we should know about in your time at Maynard or in Norwalk?
Yes, in Maynard, I introduced the work order system, which gives us the complaint. Right. I like to talk about it. I like to look at it as a request comes in or complaint on different areas, a building, roads, snow. And then we track it. It might require me or the foreman to go, or somebody to go and look at the problem, and you document. And then it might require a phone call back to the homeowner or to the individual who called. It might require also not anything. It may not even be something that has to do with our department. Then it's our job also to reroute it to the right department and follow through with the individual. Also in Maynard, I also instituted the pavement management system. Pavement management system happens to be a good scientific tool to manage our roads. Before my time, road pavement and maintenance was based on what I call the old school system, rule of thumb. But there was no good scientific way to even come before the town fathers to argue for funds. So you have Chapter 90 funds coming, and I have to manage it to get it done right. I've also have to, when I come before the town administrator and the select board, there have to be some scientific method why A road will not be paved this year, B has to be paved, or why we cannot pave either of the roads. We may just have to do patching. And so there will be some, because of the health of the road. So pavement management system gives us that ability to catalog roads, not only roads, even signages, storm drainage system. So you can catalog all your catch basins, the storm drain pipes. Also, it gives you opportunity also to look at areas where you have frequent problems. And so every year the system updates itself, and so it either brings a new road up or take one down, and so and once you also pave a new road or do some maintenance, you also put that into the system, so it elongates the life of that road. So it was a good way to catalog roads. And Maynard also, I happened to be the first tree warden. Before I came on board in Maynard, the town law was one of the reasons why they were looking. They were very concerned about tree management, and Maynard has a lot of trees, public shade trees, and then but there was no good management in place before, because they had no tree warden. So I happened to be the first tree warden. So I instituted a lot of cataloging of trees.
Was that your idea? To become the tree warden?
Part of, I'm a certified tree warden. So when I was hired, the town before my time were already looking forward to such. And I suspect probably that was one of the reasons why I was given the opportunity to serve. Yeah. So I took care of a lot of trees, conservation trees, public trees, parks, school. So we were able to do a lot of pruning and tree maintenance, and also planting and public education. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. So, Mr. Okafor, I wanted to talk with you about your experience with buildings and facility and systems management, moving off of the road for a moment. And can you give us just what your background is on that aspect of the job, facilities management, building management and maintenance, systems within buildings, capital projects, managing those?
Yes, in terms of buildings, I started before I came into roads. When I left college, from college, I worked for as a field service manager. I did a lot of inspections and on public buildings, schools, especially schools and municipal buildings, for my private contractor, which that was how I started my career. Takeoffs. Then we used to do takeoffs by basically estimating materials and looking at different entities of the building. Then, as I grew in the public works, when I was in Norwalk, I also had the opportunity to manage as superintendent of operations. We have the building maintenance division is under my purview. But in Norwalk, what we did was the city did not have, before my time, did away with employees of the building division. So it became a contractual issue. So I managed the contract. So we writing the specs and also capital improvements, monitoring every and training of making sure too that every training and every in that contract safety issues are complied with, different regulations. Also monitoring, making sure that the staff which the contractor gives us are certified on different areas, be it HVAC issues or generator, or even in the school system, we had a couple of schools with the elevator systems. Make sure that, so that's, then it was in Maynard, that I also ran into facilities where we have to manage ourselves. So before the current town administrator, Mr. Kevin Sweet, this town and the school had two different facilities. And so while he came on board was almost the same time before my time. He had few months before my time. So he was working on that. So somehow the town and the school emerged the building facilities together. So I have a foreman, a general foreman from the school system who has been running this, and then I, being the director of public works, also with him, manage the buildings. So in Maynard, I was more hands-on than in Norwalk. Norwalk was more or less capital projects, inspections, and managing the contracts. But in Maynard, we had to basically the same thing, but this time we had our in-house staff making sure that again the same issue, capital projects where which HVAC, air conditioner, these are things that you have to list and the number of years. And in terms of my capital project, I like to go 5 to 10 year period. And also every year I update my capital list, not only in the building area, roads, vehicles, and bring that up to the, and then I also like to, where possible, make it a uniform item in terms of the manufacturer. I find that it helps us in either if we have to cannibalize from an old system to get a parts to fix, as opposed to where you have 10 stuff and 10 different manufacturers. So that 5 to 10 year capital estimates, and I tend to update every year, and I bring it before the select board and the town administrator. So and even during the budget cycle, where it's also one of the things that I use for my persuasion why we should get A or B, plus during the year, the cost for maintenance, the cost for different things, also again, the work order system, I'm able to generate those things. In terms of the staff, my job is to make sure the staff, we have staff to make sure that the buildings are clean, well kept, make sure that safety is important, because a public building, be it a school, be it town offices, so signage, staircases, stairwells, so those, and then heating system, and then we also monitor the budget. If we have a heating system that has been, again, that's where the capital project is helpful. Capital, you monitor the 5 to 10 year. If it's becoming a point where it's 8 years old, 10 years old, you are spending too much money to keep it going. It's also a good argument to see if we can update that is, and then you also have a good work order system in terms of records to present in the argument, as opposed to arguing based on subjective arguments. Yeah.
Thank you. Just changing subject a little bit to stormwater. Are you familiar with the federal stormwater mandates, and have you been
Yes.
involved with administering the stormwater programs?
Yes. I would think Sherborn will be more like Maynard, where we have the MS4 system. Yes. And the recent regulation, which many towns in the Commonwealth have been looking forward to see if it can be delayed because of cost. Yes. In Maynard, before I left Maynard, we were in the process of putting together an enterprise fund to manage the storm system, because it's a very expensive cost, in part because of runoffs, and also how do we manage a small private homeowner driveway as opposed to a big company or some business entity or small or more stripped. So to be able to collect, and I think many towns, some towns in the Commonwealth have already have that already in place, because when you use you look at the enterprise fund, is a good vehicle to help as opposed to the general funds, because in the general fund, the argument sometimes you may not necessarily be able to have enough funding, especially with the cost of meeting the requirements of current requirements. He has gone very high, and so engineering consultants is there. The fees to the Commonwealth Department of Environmental Protection and other fees. Looking at our system, the public system itself, are the drainage systems, are the infiltrations, how you look at the pipes, and how we're collecting our runoffs, and many public education also to the residents on how we can manage runoffs. Yes.
Thank you. Any more questions, Paul or Mark?
May I?
Yeah, if you got another question, we got about 5 more minutes. I think.
You were in Maynard for 3 years, right?
Yes, yes, sir.
And you left in 2016.
Yes, sir.
Why?
I left because I got a job in the city of Fall River.
As an instructor?
No, sir. As a director for community maintenance, public works department. The one we just talked about with you talked about the mayor of Fall River.
But right now you're a vocational instructor,
Yes,
and you've been doing that from 2016 to now.
yes, sir.
Are you saying that between the time you left Maynard in 2016 and the time you started as a vocational instructor, you had another job?
No, I went, as I say, I went to bury my mother. It took me about 3 months, came back. My mother was sick. I went home. I thought I just wanted to visit and come back. But while I was there, she passed away. And I came back. It took me 2-3 months before I got this job in Woonsocket.
And why do you want to leave that job in Woonsocket as a vocational instructor?
I love the job because part of my goal has always been that a day will come, I will be, while also working in the public, I would like to teach even if it's part-time in college or vocational school. So this because if you look at our job, it's customer service, but also it's very educational. Why I was this window, I was waiting to get back to public service. This opportunity came up, and I took the opportunity. It's not that that's why I took the opportunity. I happens to be also rewarding because these are young men that the state of Rhode Island has. Instead of putting them in castration, the Catholic Charity is helping them to train them, and so they're looking for people, teachers, experts, or those who can help. So that's how I got that appointment, sir. It's not that it's my first choice. My first choice has always been in, if you look at my resume, it's always been in public works entity.
Okay. Mark,
Yeah, just one last one. You've been involved with maintaining sewer and water systems.
Yes.
Have you ever been involved in construction of
Yes.
into a new
Yes.
a new system?
Yes, I've been in construction. That was earlier of my career. But what I do now in construction is inspection, basically, because we do have new system. We have bidding system, put the specs together, we get a contractor, and instead of me being that I work for the town, happens to be that is the owner, so I have to be the inspector, or part of the inspector, to monitor the construction. But in terms of a contractor building the system, that was at my earlier career, where at the beginning, where if you look at my resume, I was an estimator and also field inspector. The other storm drain that we built is a small drain where my staff put a new catch basin, or put a new pipe, or repair an old pipe, as opposed to where we have a major construction. We put the bid out, get an engineering firm or contractor that will, and then we do the inspection. And if it's something that requires getting an engineering company to help us in that inspection, I also work with that engineering firm. We have used some engineering firms in the past for water and sewer systems to help us, because DEP requires us to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to just wrap up, but give you a chance if there's anything else you want to tell us, or any questions that we didn't ask that you would like us to have asked. Let us know that now.
No, there's no. The only thing I just want to add is that if I'm given the opportunity, I am not a learner. I know what is required to do for the job. I'm also a people person in terms of dealing with the public and various departments of the town. I'm also one who respects his employees. And so I think if I'm given the opportunity, I would do well. I also want to also let the board understand that because of press reports concerning Forever, I had nothing to do. It's just unfortunate I have to find myself there. But again, as I said to the board, looking back, I think it was good that I didn't get the job, because I don't want my career to be. I can look at the board right now and tell the board what's happened. So even if the board doesn't hire me, I'm at peace. But if I had gone to Forever, I think I should have run into a situation where the political entities are having their own issues, and it becomes, I will not be able to survive, and that will affect my career. So, but other than that, I want to thank the board for giving me the opportunity to come before you to express myself. And whatever this job entails, as I said, I am qualified to do the job if I'm given the opportunity.
Thank you very much
Thank you
for
very much.
coming in. Thank you for your
Thank you.
time.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody need a break, or should we go on to the next?
We're doing it on time.
All right, so we'll take a two-minute break before you can have the next person come in, Diane, but we're going to take a 2-minute break. Thank you. Okay, so we're back in session. We have our third candidate, Mr. Lip, and welcome. Thank you for coming out. We'll ask if you could just introduce yourself and describe your background a little. We've all seen your resume, but the folks out there have not. So if you could just give us a little background, and then we'll have some questions for you.
Okay. Thank you for having me. In a nutshell, I spent the last 21 years working for municipalities in the engineering division part of the DPW. I have experience in project planning, budget planning. There's a lot of experience with plan reviews, and I did 3 years with the Central Lowry project back in the late 90s. So that's basically my background.
Okay, very good. Paul, do you want to start the questioning? Do you have any questions?
I do. Do you want?
Very good. Yes.
Gonna let me ask questions?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I see from your resume that you worked for the city of Holyoke from September 2015 to January 2017. What was the circumstance of your departure from Holyoke?
The new director started in October of last year, and so we worked together for about 4 months. And after 4 months, I give my resignation.
So you're currently unemployed?
Correct. Yes.
And you've been unemployed for 5 months now?
Plus, yes, 5 months. Yes.
And in your background, you have never actually been a superintendent of public works.
That's correct also, no.
Your background is you're an engineer and have been a town engineer essentially.
Mm-hmm.
As an engineer, you review plans and drawings and deeds and things like that. But you're not in the operations end of the business, is that correct?
Well, in Holyoke, I was the assistant, so I am part of the operations. It's a 40,000 population city. In Sudbury, I was the operation assistant. It's my first job out of school. So, you know, I've been involved with the DPW operations. In Long Meadow, I was the town engineer, but I'm also the assistant to the director, and he's absent. I spent the last 20 years with the towns and cities, so I do know the operations.
Well, I don't, on your resume, you didn't say that you were an assistant. You just said town engineer, Department of Public Works. So you were a town engineer and assistant?
It's the third line down, where it says assist the public page. I think that's what he's saying.
Well, did you have a formal title of Assistant Public Works Director?
In Holyoke, correct. That's my title
Holyoke,
was the Assistant
In Long
Public
Meadow?
Works Director and City Engineer combined. And in Long Meadow, when the director, and when the director is absent, I'm the assistant.
Is that your job title, Assistant?
The job title is
In
the
Long Meadow.
town engineer, but I assume the assistant position should the director is absent, and he was absent from time to time.
And in your function, you were at Holyoke as city engineer and assistant public works superintendent from September 2015 to January 2017. So that's a year and a half or so you were at Holyoke?
A year and a half, correct, yes.
And as I look through all the things in your resume about the stuff that you've done, the impression I got, and so correct me if I'm wrong, was your primary function is an engineering function in essentially design work and
For the most part, yes. But like I said, in Sudbury, I was the operation assistant. I'm involved in snow plowing. I'm involved in the snow plowing operations. I'm involved in the budgeting, any work that involve paving, Chapter 90. That's under my control.
Sudbury was from March 1995 to June 1997?
That's correct. So the same thing with South Hadley and Long Meadow. I oversee the pavement management, and I oversee the Chapter 90 program.
As part of your overseeing these things, do you actually get out in the field and work with a crew of individuals to do construction projects?
That's a better part of my job, when I get to go out and meet, work with the guys, yes. Away from the office. I do work with the guys.
Are you responsible for managing them?
Not, I work through the supervisors, I work through the foreman, and I go to job site. If the foreman or the supervisor are not there, then I communicate directly with them, but I try to not to do that because I don't want to overstep my bound.
I'm trying to figure out what are the boundaries? So in the last job you had, you were both assistant and city engineer. This is for the city of Holyoke. And what actually were the boundaries of what your job was as opposed to the DPW director's job?
I work on projects, for like long-term project. I work on bigger project. I assist the DPW director or the superintendent, and when whatever capacity he wants me to do. So
When it comes to negotiating the union contract, for example, for the city DPW employees, are you part of any of the bargaining?
Yes, I've sat in negotiations.
Who's in charge of the bargaining?
Ultimately, the town managers. Board of Selectmen, but we're there to help. Is that a trick question?
Do you have budgetary responsibility?
Yes, I spend a great deal of my time preparing budget, capital plans, operational budget.
But in addition to preparing budgets, do you manage a budget? And if so, what budget?
Correct. So for capital projects, after the project's approved, I would take the project through a permitting stage, put the package together to advertise, and then oversee the construction until the final completion of the project, making sure that the project, are under budget.
Now, when you have a city like the city of Holyoke, its population, I think, is in excess of 40,000, and you compare it with Sherborn, whose population is 4,000,
Yeah.
being 1/10 the size of the city of Holyoke. Are you aware of how the difference in resources between a community 10 times larger than Sherborn and what Sherborn has available?
It's depend. I mean, Holyoke, it's not a wealthy city. Holyoke gets funding through CBDG, through a grant. So there's ways and means of getting the work done, but I would think that the complexity is still there for a small town, as opposed to a bigger town.
Well, I think what I'm driving at is that in a town like Sherborn, where we don't have a lot of people to do a lot of particular functions, the CM&D director might be expected to do a little bit of everything. I would call
It's
it...
what it seems like. Yeah, it seems like you're looking for a jack of all trade.
Yes, and so my question to you would be, how is it from your background that you could go from the sort of higher level work that you were doing for a city like Holyoke to being sort of the chief chef and bottle washer combined here in Sherborn? Do you feel you can do that?
I can do that, and I think that's that's the benefit of being in that field, or the civil engineering field in general, where you can be in the office and you can be out in the field with the guys. You can be, hands-on. It's the variety of responsibilities.
So you feel you can do that?
Yes.
should we let Mark get a few in?
Okay.
Sure. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
We're interviewing and a variety of people, some heavier on the engineering staff side of things, some who've got more background in operations and line management and that sort of thing. And clearly, I think you land on the staff engineering side, and I think you hear some of that
Sure.
in my colleagues' questions. But, I think you've also probably managed engineers and you've had supervisory experience in other places. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about, your management style, how you like to work with people, how you deal with, the people that you have to interact with in other parts of the municipal government. And then, while I know you haven't had direct union experience, maybe talk about how you see the role of this job in dealing with the union and how you might do that. And if you do have some particular experience with the unions, I think we'd be interested to hear about that as well.
I don't work directly with the union guys much, but I do work, on a day-to-day basis. In the morning, I touch base with the supervisors, the foremen. If the work needs to be done, I would, for next week, I would talk to the supervisor foreman to make sure that he's able to schedule the guys and the equipment to make sure everything's ready. And the day before, I talk to the supervisor foreman just to make sure if there's any other dig safe marking that need to be done or anything else that need to be, for support. And then I would follow through with the inspection of the work. And back to the management. I mean, I like to, to have policies and procedures in front of me so that everyone, so that everyone know what's going on and it's fair. As a manager, to be fair is it's good to be fair. It's good for everybody. And I teamwork again. Teamwork, looking at the problem solving proactively. Not and collaboration. So.
Do you have an example of a problem that you solved using teamwork?
Problem solving teamwork. Just give you an example of in Longmeadow where there was a casino proposed, MGM proposed a casino in nearby town, nearby to Longmeadow, and Longmeadow is entitled to the mitigation money through the impact, either through from traffic impact or impact to the the emergency response that you could exhaust the resource of the town that that's not there. So I work with the town manager. I bring out the 3 signals in town that are that they're outdated, the level of service that need to be improved, and I've been working on the signals for a while, so I brought up to him, and he ran with that. It's not, it's a problem, but at the end of we able to get some money, not complete, not 100% of what we want, but the bulk of the money was to address the, to improve the signals, traffic signals. So, that's a lot of collaboration, a lot of working with different groups of people, police chief, fire chief, town planners.
So you would, if you took this job, you'd step in, there'd be a union workforce. There's also a buildings component, which I think we'll talk about a little bit later and so on. But what would the first 60 days look like?
Again, I like, if there's not a policy or procedures in place, I like to, see if we can work on that and work with the town manager, town administrator, and Board of Selectmen, and just make sure that we're clear on what we need to do, It's a job, we deal with crisis at some point, but if the project or job that could be planned, it should be fairly straightforward. And if you have a clear policies and procedure in place, then it's even better. It's getting to know the town, you know. I know it's not a small town, but still, I'm sure there's a lot of,
It'd be surprisingly complex.
yes, and a lot of institutional knowledge, but, you know, with the workers that have been here a long time, I would make sure that I get to know the ins and outs, I guess. Yeah. Does that kind of answer?
Yep, thank you.
Okay. I'm going to change the subject a little bit. Part of this position, as you know, is about managing the buildings and facilities and the systems related to those, and also overseeing capital projects. And so if you could talk a little about your background in those areas and what you see as your strengths in those areas or experience.
I would say I'm more comfortable with the capital program budgeting and management aspect of the jobs. I spent a great deal of time, preparing 5-year plans with the director and with supervisor, water supervisor, highway or sewer, to come up with, to make sure we have a plan in place to deal with, long term. And I think I forgot the latter half of your question.
Well, the buildings, do you have buildings management and operations, building operations experience?
I do have building, not the day-to-day, but I work with the facility directors to come up with long-term plan to address the, roof repair, to address window replacement, to address the changing of boilers, looking at, steps, retaining wall, espionage, a number of things that relate to school building, public town-owned buildings. I have experience being clerk of the work for the clubhouse constructions. That was one I did in South Hadley.
So talk about that a little bit. What was involved in that project?
It was, the town has a golf course, and there was no clubhouse. So, the town funded to construct a clubhouse, and it was designed, and then I, oversee the constructions. It's not a big great clubhouse, but it's good size.
But you had day-to-day oversight on the contract?
Yes, that was day-to-day from start to finish.
Okay.
And, I was a part of the school construction in Long Meadow, not involved hands-on, but, it was shopped out, but I was there to help out in anything that needs to, plan, a review of site plans, traffic issues.
Have you had experience in managing the maintenance part of the building obligations, the responsibilities, taking care of overseeing maintenance or contracts or things like that?
And again, I do get involved with putting together the budget for the whole department. So I put together a budget for the maintenance department.
And then who is it who oversees the
on a day-to-day? The
implementation?
facility director.
I see. Okay.
And I work closely with him.
So that's a colleague at the city.
Correct.
Okay. Have you had any experience with the stormwater programs and the federal stormwater regulations? Have you run into those?
I have, yes. I have experience in putting together the bylaws and the ordinance, and then I have experience in producing the yearly report for the Nibley Phase 2 stormwater.
Is that in Holyoke?
Holyoke, Long Meadow, South Hadley.
Okay. Anything more, Mark?
No, I think I'm good.
Paul?
I'm good.
You're good. Okay, so we want to give you the opportunity to either tell us anything we didn't ask you about or any questions you wish you'd been asked that you weren't. whatever additional information you want to add.
Thank you for having me, and,
We appreciate you coming in.
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're, you guys don't need a break now, or do you? Thanks again. Good evening.
Good evening.
So, thanks for your patience as we went through, several interviews. So, Sean, we're going to, I take it you probably didn't hear those interviews. We're going to approach the same as we have with everybody, which is to ask you at the beginning if you want to introduce yourself and provide some background on, on your experience, relevant experience and so forth. I know you're known, with the others I said, the people in the audience didn't have the benefit of their resume, and I know you are known to many of the people out there, but I still think it would be helpful to follow that process.
Right. So, a couple things I just handed out. One, I just handed those guys another copy of my resume. I'm sure they already have it. Also, a cover letter that I sent in, and because I have kind of a unique set of local experience, I also did what I called an addendum to my resume, which is more tailored to why I feel I'm a fit to this job, more so than just my resume. My resume highlights a lot of my professional experience, both when I was down south. Is this on? I guess he's not listening. And my, can you hear it?
I can hear you.
I don't hear it.
Okay.
Whoa. All right, that's better, I guess. And then I also handed out a relevant finding from legal counsel and the State Ethics Board outlining, I think it's 12 pages long, outlining the guidelines for the conflict of interest that allows me, as a uniquely small town, there's a separate set of rules that allows not only a sitting Board of Selectmen, but a current or a recent Board of Selectmen to apply for such job. In a bigger town or city, you wouldn't even be allowed to without a couple-year cool-off period. It was outlined by legal counsel and backed up by the State Ethics Board why it is that I can apply for this job, whether or not I leave as a selectman member. So that's what I just handed out. They already probably have had it. And anyone is welcome to have that. The clerk, it's been filed with the clerk for a couple of months now, I think. And just so everyone's aware, I grew up here. I've been in town for a long time. I've been involved in a lot of activities in town, the fire department, committees for years. I've donated a lot of time. And I've become very familiar with the buildings, the facilities, the equipment here in town, probably, I think, more so than anyone in recent past. And we have a lot of buildings that are aging, and I've just taken it upon myself to learn about them and then get involved in it as a selectman member now. And it's come to a head the past couple of years because there's a lot of money that's going to get spent keeping the buildings up, so that's kind of my expertise.
Okay. Paul, do you want to start?
Sure.
Questions?
Sure. I have a couple easy ones, and then I got a tough one. I'm the guy that's been asking some really tough questions today. But the easy ones are, you didn't mention in your presentation, but you are an engineer, are you not?
I am. Mechanical engineer.
And you said you've been in town for a long time. How long have you been in town?
Well, I was born in 1975. I grew up here. Went through high school, lived here while I was in college, and then for 8.5 years I was away in North Carolina and then came back in 2006, and I've been here since.
And I think, as you said, you're quite familiar with the roads in town and the intersections in town. You've been on traffic safety and all of that. Is that all correct? True?
Right. I was on traffic safety for I think about 5 or 6 years, and then for public safety, and then really only stopped that because I became a selectman member.
All right, so here comes the tough one. You're a selectman, you're in the fire department, and if you become CM&D director, the concern is that there's a lot of conflicts there, you know. And so we have a 12-page letter that a lawyer like me might enjoy reading, but other than a lawyer, how are you going to manage those conflicts? What would you explain to the people of the town as to how can you do all these jobs?
Well, there's several items in there, so I'll start with some of the easier ones. I see a handful of lawyers in the room, and they can all appreciate that any time you do two things that are somewhat related, there becomes this potential for conflict. So even as a Board of Selectmen member, I had to get a legal finding because I was a member, and I was a member on the fire department. Of course, in a small town, the State Ethics Board has to recognize that you need a fire department to function, and those are residents, and sometimes those are political figures. One thing to keep in mind is our Board of Selectmen gets paid nothing. We're all here for free. We're volunteers. So I'm a member on the fire department. I get paid a small hourly wage for that. I'm also a lieutenant and quartermaster on the fire department. So there's a deemed conflict there. That position's appointed by the chief. So there's a conflict between me as a Board of Selectmen member and the chief. So one would have to outweigh, is that conflict so dangerous that you should just give up the value of somebody that serves both purposes? And nobody was really uncomfortable with that when I joined, or I would have had to step down as a lieutenant or even a member of the fire department. As CM&D director, I would think people would certainly see that the same guy that's showing up in the middle of a snowstorm or the middle of the night on a rescue call in the fire engine also is the CM&D director. Yeah, there's potential conflicts. There's also some great advantages. We've had CM&D directors that lived on the other side of Springfield. He wasn't showing up in the middle of the night for a call. I would be. It would seem unlikely that anyone would be so uncomfortable with that situation that they'd ask me to step down from one. So there's several of them. How you get paid would be a different one, and I don't know how we would handle that. Because of stipends and hourly, I think that's pretty insignificant, though. The pay isn't much. The Board of Selectmen member, again, you pointed out there's 12 pages of explanations of how you can do this and file that. And it's likely that reasonable people would look at that and go, there's still a conflict, because David would basically work for me and I would work for him. The reason the conflict isn't direct is because that position doesn't directly work for the Board of Selectmen. It works through the town administrator. I would say that I'd be likely offering to hand in my resignation effective when the contract was signed if I was chosen for the job. If that was advisable and desired by either the public or the board. The Board of Selectmen it's a volunteer position. There's nothing really to gain from that. Other than a lot of knowledge of what goes on, and a lot of time that gets spent by those three members, Chuck, myself, on matters that affect everyone in town. So I would give that up. I think it's, I don't think it adds value to the town to give that up, but I think it adds value to the town to get my services as the CM&D director and facilities manager. I'm eager to do it, and I think I can do an excellent job. And I think I understand the role of it better than, frankly, anyone else in the room.
Any more, Paul?
That's it.
Mark?
Yeah. Well, we'll start like we did with everybody else. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
I guess what, you've told us about your technical skills, but I want to talk about the management side of things. And because I think it's equally, if not more important, because there are technical resources that can either are in the department or can be brought in. And I don't think you've got a lot of union experience that I was able to suss out of here, but you've worked with groups of employees, I presume. So spend some time telling us about what your management style is like. How do you deal with your employees? How do you deal with the people you have to interact with in municipal government? How do how would you run the operation? And maybe if you've had a situation where you had to deal with an issue with a group of employees, how that went, and what you did, and to resolve it.
Okay. That was about 5 questions.
It's all part and parcel of the same thing.
My management style, and a lot of people in here know me, I've worked for, with, or had several work for me. I think anyone would agree that I almost never ask anyone to do something I'm not willing to go do with them or have already done. That being said, I think that creates a fairness to those employees. That they know that I'm not asking them to do something I wouldn't do or think that I'm above doing. I feel that it's best to be fair. I've had a handful of opportunities since I started in my professional career where I walked into situations where I was by far the youngest, and that played a role in how I had to handle some situations. This would be one of those situations as well.
So how did you handle that?
You start by being fair, and at times you have to prove that you earned your seat to be there, and that sometimes takes some time. But in fairness to the employees, they need to be empowered. And I had a situation where some of that empowerment had been taken away from some senior employees, and frankly, I'd be walking into something similar. And at times, the best way to have someone excel is empower them and give them the opportunity to excel at any stage in their career, and then they can help you excel. But somewhat answered 2 of them because
Do you have an example of how you empowered someone or some group?
I had a group at a plant that I was working at. It was a maintenance group. It was a very large plant, so there was a handful of maintenance employees, and they were management had changed because the plant had been bought, and I came in shortly after that, and there was a little bit shakeup in supervisors, and some senior maintenance people had been basically demoted. There was no real leadership, and I was in charge of the facility, in charge of maintenance, in charge of the grounds. I certainly wasn't going to take over the day-to-day operations of maintenance, but by evaluating the staff and then empowering the people that should be there they excelled, and then really everyone below them were able to fall back into place, accepting the leadership of the people that needed to be there, that perhaps weren't taking on that role when in the void of some leadership. I can't remember the third or fourth part of that question.
Well, why don't we move on to something else? So, I mean, as you pointed out, you've been here a long, long time. You're part of the fabric of the town. What would the first 60 days look like when you get there, and how do you convince the people that work there and the people you would work with, since they know you so well, that that things are going to change?
That things are going to change? Well, the first 60 days, there's not a whole lot that's going to change, except, I mean, it's going to be different than it was. This job is going to be different than what they're used to. Ed served one role, and this function is going to be, debatable, but it might be 2/3, 1/3 of that role in another. What's important to understand right now is the workforce needs to focus on one thing, and the director needs to focus on several. We all saw that John showed up tonight, and he's already doing some of it. He's getting the road projects done, or going to. I think there's been a void in coherent leadership on what we're going to do with our funds that we have and the projects we're going to hit right now. So one thing that would happen immediately, like the next Selectmen's meeting, would be a very concise, coherent list of where that road money's intended to go. Because I've been on the receiving end of sitting around the room wondering, how did we get this and how did we get here? And equally as important is a handful of projects that need to be started immediately. Sue Tyler was here earlier tonight talking about the fire station. That project should have already started. Sue's still here. It's no secret that there's an ambulance where a fire truck belongs right now at the station. That is a very urgent project we're not talking about because the project's waiting for a facilities manager. So, day one, the groundwork for that needs to start. Day one, the groundwork for fixing the roof at the police station needs to start too. It's overdue. There's water leaking into the police station, and we missed the opportunity to fix it before the cooling season, but we need to fix the heating system and the roof at the same time, and hopefully this year before the snow flies. There's several other projects in the pipeline that need to get started. Those need to, well within that first 60 days, those need to start. The road projects need to be outlined. Within the first week, I would sit and talk with each employee separately to discuss my management style, discuss their role, and my expectations. One key part of that I'm not sure everyone's aware of, this is the last time, and I'm sure Paul's familiar with it, we've gone through CM&D directors on an average of 4 to 5 years since the 70s, since the 80s. Lyle Mailman was the 70s into the 80s, and then we just have a revolving door every 4 to 5 years. We've done a great job of promoting people to other jobs. The common thread throughout that entire time has been a couple of key guys, one of which is still sitting here. This is the last time we get John McAvoy as the interim. If we make a change now and it only lasts 2 to 3 years, we've lost that common thread because he's going to retire. Warren's retiring. So all that knowledge, not that they're not passing it down to the rest of the crew, but a lot of it's up here, and it's gone. And then you're left with the crew and the common thread that you had that entire time. That's important, and it's important to empower that and make the best use of that immediately. And we're doing that right now, because John's going to manage the projects right now, as we talk about going out to bid Coolidge and Kendall Speen and the rest of the roads.
So you still see yourself in this role in 10 years?
Yes.
So Sean, I'm going to ask some of the same questions I asked everybody else, just to be perfectly fair, and I'll ask you some other questions too. Can you address your specific experience with managing building and facilities maintenance and capital budgeting planning for building projects?
I can. So most broadly with A.O. Smith, I was in charge of a facility that had several warehouses, a distribution center, and a large manufacturing center. So the building and the equipment were kind of one. It was kind of heavy manufacturing, so there was presses, and I mean, I handled all of the capital appropriations, all the budgeting for the building and all of the equipment. There was a lot of upgrading of equipment. There was a lot of transferring equipment. A.O. Smith is a huge corporation, so they're constantly moving equipment around and installing it in different plants and adding on to plants and so forth. So that was my experience there.
Okay.
Here, I've taken a pretty active role in our own buildings since I got home. Everybody knows I own a construction company now, so that's somewhat what I do. Most of my construction is residential, but I've taken a role in the buildings here, mostly volunteer, through my role as quartermaster, but that's just the fire stations. But I think most people in town that have paid attention have looked to me for some advice on what we're doing with these buildings, the police station, the fire station.
So what would you do differently with building maintenance for the town, facilities maintenance for the town? What needs to be done that's not being done now, or that you could implement?
Well, what's just about to start is some capital projects that haven't been, we're on a cycle. We're now at the tail end of it, where we hadn't worked on the buildings in almost 2 decades. We all recognize that. We had probably gone 2 to 3 decades before, and then the tail end of the 90s into the early 2000s, we built, remodeled this, and then left everything. Prior to David getting here, we had a kind of a facilities manager. I'm not sure what his title was, but he was a part-time guy keeping an eye on all the buildings. I've been advocating for that since he left. So that's what part of this role is. So immediately, we all recognize there's some capital projects that need to start.
Yep.
And there's ongoing maintenance, more so than just contracts with HVAC vendors and keeping guys in the loop. There's equipment that needs to be upgraded continually. So having someone that's their role every day is important, and can be laid out a lot better than waiting for on-site to come out and do a survey and then having it sit.
Would you use that survey?
Absolutely. I helped develop it.
Yeah, okay.
Actually, it's sitting right here. I carry it with me every day.
You need the pocket
Well,
version.
when I come here. But I understand it well. It was important to help justify. I mean, some of it was blatantly obvious. We all know that every time we come in here, we laugh about it's too hot, too cold.
Right.
The fire station's the same way, and there's fire alarm issues. Some of that stuff was blatant, but some of it took an assessment to really sit down and lay out. And so the most important thing is to be working on that on an ongoing basis. So we don't fall so far behind.
Okay. Changing topics a little bit, are you, I guess, what's your familiarity with the stormwater regulations, the federal stormwater regulations, and the town's obligations, and is that something that you feel comfortable being?
It's something I
point
feel
person
comfortable,
on?
I mean, I know that Bridget did a lot of the work
Yeah,
with the last permit.
yeah.
I know that we had a deadline looming for this permit. This next go-around is actually going to take some work if they don't lay off on the regulations. I don't know if they're going to. But one of the concerns is we'll actually have to start addressing illicit discharges, which we own some of, which I was going to bring up if we continue to talk about Cemetery Lane, because the fire station represents an illicit discharge, which we're going to get dinged for when we go for the permit.
And so how do you address that? What's the?
We're going to need
What's the fix?
We're going to need to do some physical changes to the stormwater coming off the building.
Okay.
But I'm not saying we're going to start that if the permit doesn't require it.
Right.
But somebody needs to be working on that, and not just the permit issue, but the physical aspects of what we're going to start doing about.
And do you see that as part of this role?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then, I know you're a mechanical engineer. I think the other candidates were civil engineers, but you must have some civil, I assume you've got some civil.
Well, there's
background
overlap
base.
in the backgrounds.
So that's what I'm wondering, can you address that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I can't design a bridge and stamp it,
Yeah,
but we don't do a whole lot of that here. The initial education of a civil engineer is more to, the road work. And site work. But that's not a huge part of, I think there was some wording in there that mentioned town engineer in the job description, but this isn't really a town engineer role, as most towns would see it. I mean, in most places, the town engineers are working on, I know that Natick has town engineers that work on stormwater, that's what they do. We're much more rounded description here. There's no one particular thing. If we're going to do stormwater and we need an engineer, we're going to hire one.
and do you feel comfortable in that position as the point person on those kinds of
Yeah,
projects?
absolutely.
To hire a stormwater or somebody to design a road, to review plans for, grading and
Right,
things like that?
I do.
I imagine you do it with your
Yeah, I mean, that's,
construction company.
right.
And on the topic of the construction company, what are your plans? Are you going to continue to operate that business?
No, not if I had this job. I mean, my father's part of it. So we.
He's not very good, I heard, Sean, by the way.
What's that?
He's not very good, I heard.
No, he just started.
Only a couple of years.
If you haven't noticed, he's getting to the point where he doesn't need to be doing that, climbing around on roofs and everything in the middle of summer. But, everybody knows I'm finishing up a house on Hunting Lane. That's to be sold at the end of the month,
Yeah.
God willing. And so that's my big project wrapping up. And then I have another one. We're about halfway through. We're going to wrap that up. And, when I start this, it's not like I'm going to be driving to both jobs. My father can easily finish what needs to get done.
So, I just want to just confirm this. So the plan's not to knit together the company on part-time and this job, and you're already kind of running in circles with fire department and selectmen and CM&D. I just wanted to kind of
No,
understand how that would work.
if anyone thinks that this is like a part-time job, it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, this is easily a 50-hour-a-week job, and anyone that thinks it isn't is kidding themselves.
Okay. Let's see. And I guess another question I would have is, I assume you've thought about this. You probably already run into it because of your role as a selectman, but I'll ask you anyway, which is you're going to be dealing with issues, if you have this CM&D director role, you're going to be dealing with issues with your friends and neighbors who want stuff from you. They want their road fixed, or they want some other problem solved. They're going to want to call you at all hours of the day and night because you live in town, because they know you. You know, for better or worse, the guy who lived west of Springfield you talked about before didn't have to run into people in the supermarket. So how do you deal with that? What do you, how do you engage or not engage in that kind of a situation? How do you draw boundaries if you need to?
Well, I don't think it's any different than you guys right now. I mean, we all deal with that. And you usually have to just look at it through the lens of what
Yeah, but if
although this individual's asking for something, what is it for the town what's best for the town? Not really any individual.
I mean, when somebody asks me about a pothole in front of their house, I say, call the CM&D director.
Right.
Or I call the CM&D director.
I'll tell him to call Mike.
But, yeah, see, that doesn't work.
That's exactly what I'll do.
So you are more on the front line, I think, Sean, with that stuff, if you're in that role.
Well, frankly, those people call me right now.
Yeah.
And they say, I can't get a call back. Why, can you get somebody to fix the pothole in front of my house? That happens now. It's been happening for about 8 or 10 years.
Yeah.
Hey, you just paved South Main Street and my house flooded. So I ended up there pumping the cellar out anyway. Not everything we do for residents is an incorrect thing.
Oh, I think most of it's correct. It's just a
Right.
question of setting priorities and.
Well, I mean, it's just something you have to weigh. I didn't always agree with the decisions that were being made before for the benefit or detriment of residents. You really just need to weigh that on a case-by-case basis. But I will say that I think having a good familiarity with the town is a benefit for that. Bring someone in that doesn't know where Woodland Street is, they're going to have a tough time analyzing whether or not they should be plowing it. That's the benefit of me knowing not just the people, but the history behind what's going on and what we've done and what we're going to do.
Can you serve in that kind of a role, a management role, without getting immersed in the political intrigue and the personalities? As a selectman and in town hall, you're surrounded by that all the time. Do you feel like you're going to be able to strike a good balance in a CM&D role that's a little different maybe from what you have to do as a selectman from that standpoint? I mean, at least as I see it, and I'm just suggesting this, you may see it differently, that the CM&D role or any kind of director position should be a little bit insulated from the political intrigue and should be a little bit more of a management and I don't want to say scientific, but more methodological about what gets done and less about who's asking them to do it. Have you had thoughts about that?
I have. I'm comfortable I can strike that balance. It's really on everyone else's shoulders to see if they're comfortable with me striking that balance. Again, we all somewhat strike that. I'm in town every day. It's not like I'm not somewhat on both sides of that anyway. I'm on the fire department. I'm on the board of selectmen. I've had to do that anyway.
Okay.
It's a challenge, but I'm also not going away. So whether I was doing it or not, I'm still seeing what's going on in town day to day, constantly, more than all three of you combined, whether I'm a board of selectmen member or not.
Paul, anything?
I'm good.
Okay. Mark? Good, okay. Again, as we've asked everybody, anything you want to add? Sean, I know nobody else gave us a half an inch of paper, but anything you want to add that you want to tell us, or any questions you wish we'd asked that we didn't ask that you'd like us to talk about?
Well, I want to add that the reason I handed out a half inch of paper, and I'd be more than willing to hand it to anyone else that has concerns, is that I would very much like to have this rule. And I think the town would benefit immensely from me having this rule. It's a unique circumstance for me and the town. You can't really just duplicate it. I grew up next to that building. I've lived there almost my whole life. I've watched it. I've learned from it. It's somewhat bred in me. And that shouldn't come as a conflict to people. That shouldn't be scary to people. It should just, people should welcome it. It's something I want to do. There's nothing wrong in my intentions. I've immersed myself in this town. I've given half of my adult life to this town in various roles. So.
I do have another question, actually. It kind of gets back to the last thing I was asking about. So as a director, you're going to be, you talked a little bit before about how the relationship with David gets a little complicated, I guess is the word. But as a director, you're also going to have dealings with other director level town employees. What's your approach going to be if you disagree with the chief, or you disagree with the fire chief, even though you're in the department, but in your role as a CM&D director, you disagree with the superintendent, whoever? How do you broker those disagreements? And I mean, it's easier as a selectman to tell people what you think should happen, maybe, than it is as a CM&D director, because you're in more of a even plane, I guess.
Yeah, well, again, I think more than any of the other members, I've been doing that a little bit. I think it's safe to say, and it's partially because I'm in town, it's partially because I'm on the fire department. I've already been dealing with that. I think Rick would attest to that. The various fire chiefs I've had over the past handful of years would attest to that. And, you always have to strike that balance. And I've had to, sitting at that seat as well. But again, we do too. We're residents. At times, we're parents with kids at the school, and we're either on the school committee or we're going through negotiations. You always have to strike that balance. This would be a little different because it's my livelihood, but he's soon to be a resident, so he's got to strike that balance. And the fire chiefs have almost always been residents. They have to strike that balance.
Okay.
I don't know if there's a buzzword to explain it, but you just have to work through those things. We have a new chief starting, so I have to develop that relationship with him. If he's not comfortable with it, he's not going to appoint me as a lieutenant quartermaster. That's his prerogative. Or yours, if it's even acceptable. I think there's a huge overlap there with this job description and what the quartermaster does. It could almost be swallowed up by it. It just happens to live under two houses. So that's yet to be seen. And again, the chief's not here, so I can't say how that's going to work out.
Not yet, yep. Hopefully soon.
So you would continue on as lieutenant, provided he would reappoint you?
What's that?
You would continue on as lieutenant, provided he would reappoint you?
I would.
You would. So if there's a car wreck, right, and we need CM&D there, and we need the fire department there, which hat do you put on?
Think about how valuable that is. Think about that for a second.
Yeah, but there's only one of you.
Yeah, you're holding the radio, and the CM&D director's not the one grabbing the sander or the loader. But the CM&D director would be driving engine 4 on the way to the call, which is me, and immediately realize we're going to need the sander down here and the sweeper or whatever, and make that call. The radio goes to both frequencies. I can tell you that that call's gone on deaf ears plenty of times, and it's been well documented on the radio. So, there's plenty of room for improvement from what we've had, and again, it's not a requirement, and I think I put that in my document. This isn't a requirement, but it's a huge benefit to the town. It's not like we have 50 firefighters and I'm taking someone's job here. There's only a handful of us. So the guy that wakes up next to the highway garage is going to get in his truck, and go drive to the fire station and grab a fire truck. It's not a bad thing.
And this is the same stuff that
It's basically
David
the same
provided us?
stuff, yeah, I found one
Looks a
misspelled
lot
word.
nicer.
Yeah, it's much nicer paper.
What's it?
It
Yeah,
definitely looks nicer.
I didn't think the paper here would be as nice.
Anything more, Mark?
No, I think I'm
Paul?
good, thank you.
Good.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Sean. We're all set. So now I guess it's, a question of what we want to do as a committee at this point. And I guess I have a couple of suggestions. One is Chuck is not here. He has had a personal family issue arise tonight, so I would like to give him a chance to watch the video so he could participate in a decision process. So we're not back to a three-person Board of Selectmen for this. So that would mean scheduling a meeting when Chuck can come in. The second thing is there is a fifth candidate. Chuck and I were able to meet with that candidate. He was not able to come in tonight. I think we would like to have either the other selectmen get to meet with him or have him come in for an interview, probably have him come in for a public interview, the same as everybody else, before that decision-making process. If that's okay with the two of you, we can schedule our next meeting to do that, maybe even the beginning of next week. Just
Yeah, I think we
try
want
get
to
something
keep
done as
it
quickly as
moving.
possible. I don't know what Chuck's, I don't know what his constraints are as far as time.
My 2 cents is, I think I'm ready to make a decision
Okay.
at this point. And I agree that Chuck should be involved, but he also wasn't here for the interviews, so
That's the beauty of television.
I understand, but he doesn't get to ask any questions. Didn't have a chance to participate in that way. So that makes it a lot harder to depend on him, but assuming he has no questions, I hate to bring people back because he has questions, I'll put it that way.
Well, he might just have to live with that, right? I mean, he might have to live with that, or he might have to do his own follow-up with questions. I mean, I agree with you. I don't think we should be bringing people back to have Chuck question them, but I do think we give them an opportunity to see these guys were pretty well peppered with questions, right? And I also think, there was another candidate who wasn't able to come tonight. I think it's only fair to give them a chance too, if they want to come in and be interviewed.
That has to be an equal chance, not, you mentioned talking to people privately.
You can move up, there's seats right here, says, right in the front row. There's 3 of them right there.
Chuck might not hear it on TV.
What's that?
I'm running out of DVD.
The
So
point,
talk quick, Paul, is what he's saying.
the point I was making is that private interviews, I don't think is the way to go. You had mentioned that.
Yeah, that's fine, so I'm happy with calling
If
somebody
there's
back in.
somebody
Yeah,
has to,
yeah, I'm happy with having that person call in. If they come in, if they don't want to come in, then they don't have to be considered, but they should have that opportunity. It was a strong candidate, and, they made David's screening, they just couldn't make it here tonight.
okay. The last comment is that I've been pressing for an interim because I feel that the department has so much going on and needs to get going. And now if we're going to go through another cycle, we had hoped to have things cleared up by now mid-June. If we're going to have to set up another meeting and then we have to have another interview, and whoever the person is has to give notice to whoever they are and make arrangements and so on. Dragging this thing on much further without any interim is not good. So if we're going to do all this, I want it done as fast as possible.
Yep. So I would throw out that we tentatively schedule meetings on the 20th and the 21st, if people can make it, and then depending on what Chuck's schedule is and this other candidate's schedule, we could drop one of those meetings. But we won't have an opportunity to schedule a meeting, another time. So let's try to get both those dates on the calendar, if that's okay. Those work?
Both of them work for me.
What days?
That would be next Tuesday and next Wednesday, Paul.
Well, I am town council in towns whose Board of Selectmen meet on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and they don't let me know about whether or not I need to attend a meeting, their meetings, until usually the days of those meetings. So Tuesdays and Wednesdays are difficult for me and unpredictable. But no one has specifically asked me to be at their meeting on those days, so.
Excellent.
But it may arise, so at this point, I'm okay to be there.
Okay. That's good. Maybe you can get somebody to bridge you just for this part of the process, and then you can attend,
Well, I want to be there for the decision.
That's what I mean. I'm just wondering if you can schedule it through your office or something so you can be sure to be here those 2 nights, just because they're so critical to keeping this thing moving.
Yeah, no, you mean have somebody else cover the boards of selectmen in the other towns?
Yeah, I think you can. No?
That's,
I'm very impressed with the other people in your office, Paul. I think they could do it. We'll try to get through it on Tuesday or Wednesday. And if you run into a problem, let us know. But I think then it's going to push it out to the next week, unfortunately. David, can you set that up? Figure out with Chuck and with the 5th candidate whether one or both of those work. If they both work, why don't you keep them both on the schedule? Ask them to block off both, and that way if Paul runs into trouble Tuesday, we still have Wednesday. Okay. Does that work, Paul? Okay, great.
yes, thank you.
All right, good. Do we have any more business here?
That's the
The
minutes we
minutes.
want to approve.
Minutes, okay.
Move approval.
Move approval of the minutes?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? And those were the minutes for April 27 and May 16. And that was it? We didn't have any selectmen reports?
Nope.
Anybody? No? Okay.
There was a number of the selectmen that I represent have been very concerned about a shooting in Virginia where a congressman was shot because apparently of his political beliefs. And there's a sense among many selectmen that that we all serve the public.
Yeah.
And personal safety of those who serve is paramount. I've got some people who are thinking they need to bring their own weapon to selectmen's meetings to protect themselves. And that's not the kind of world we want to live in, and that's
No.
not the kind of community that we want to be. So I think we should all grieve for the events that took place and to resolve that we're going to carry on in the best tradition of public service without letting those events affect us.
That was well said. Thanks, Paul. Anything, Mark? We're all set?
All set?
We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
There was a request for
All in
public
favor?
comment. I don't know
Oh,
if
yeah,
you're going
let's
to take
take-
it or not, or...
What are we taking public comment on?
The interviews tonight?
Sure, why not? That'd be
You
helpful.
want to hear public comment?
I'd like to hear what Neil has to say.
Okay,
And anybody else?
that's fine.
But some people have left and are outside, so if you're going to give equality to everybody, let them...
Well, I'm just thinking we're going to be here another hour with public comments. I don't know. It wasn't really,
Yeah.
I wasn't really planning to have public
Can
comments.
we, I understand that. Can we keep it to 2 minutes?
Yeah.
So,
Neil,
yep, Neil McPherson.
can we keep it to 2 minutes?
I'll do my best.
Thank you.
Great Rock Road. So I have been the chairperson of a number of different search committees for the police chief and the fire chief twice. And I'd just like to say tonight, relative to the process, that I think unfortunately the process has been flawed. In the past, that we've had a very specific process that we've followed, including assessment centers for some of the candidates. So I'll walk people through the past processes we've followed, which is typically a resume screening process with usually about 5 people. Typically, some brief interviews to weed through the individuals. Typically, an interview by a committee, and then recommendations were made to the Board of Selectmen. So I was part of this process, and I helped out with the resume screen. It was done by a small number of people. We then find ourselves here tonight. I see some of the candidates here tonight who don't even have the minimum qualifications according to the job description. So I just want to be on record that, I think the process tonight, and especially given the fact that there is a selectman as part of this process, has been anything but transparent and frankly not well done. So while I appreciate the fact that we want to get this done quickly, right, I am surprised that we're moving forward and we're having an interview like tonight with no assessment center, especially when Mr. Durenzis, every time we have had a selection process, has said to us we need to have an assessment center. Our collective goal is to make sure we find the best person for the job. That includes not just having high-level commentary, all right, but also finding out what their technical skills are. And I think that that is being missed as part of this process. The other thing I just want to, confirm is that we talked tonight a lot about the building management. And when I spoke to David previously, that was about 10% of the job. Right? The other 90% is being a DPW director. So I do think it's important as we look at this, we figure out what that percentage is. If it's 90% building management, then that's going to sway what type of candidate you're going to want versus 90% DPW director. All right. The only other thing that I would point out is certainly there is some potential conflict of interest with one of the candidates. And I think it's very important if that candidate is selected that the board look at that very carefully. While the Ethics Commission may have come up with a statement saying that that is, still within the realms of being ethically viable, we need to talk about good business practice. And good business practice does not put David in a situation where potentially someone from the Board of Selectmen oversees David, who then has to administer a review for that same person. That is a bad business practice. So I would just ask this group, I understand you're in a difficult position, that we should be looking very carefully at this process. We should be very careful with the process, and I think very transparent. And last point is relative to the fire station. I heard tonight that there's this major priority for fixing the fire station. Let me be clear as the chief, acting chief, and having been the chief for the past 12 years, there is no urgency to have that station fixed today or tomorrow. It would be nice to have that station fixed today or tomorrow, but there is no public safety issue associated with this. It is nice and convenient for a few people relative to where that truck would be placed. There is no priority, there is no public safety issue with that, so thank you.
My name's Kevin Cole. I live at 19 Ivy Lane. I am the general superintendent for the largest municipal construction company in Massachusetts. I sit on the board of directors for the utility contractors of New England. And in both of those capacities, we deal with CMD directors, public works directors all the time, and I find the best ones are the ones that are fully engaged and really care about their jobs. I think from everything I've heard and, see, to Neil's point, there are some people that aren't qualified for the position that, you've interviewed tonight. And there are some people that, based on their resume, it seems like they're just here for a job and a paycheck. And I think you have one candidate, Sean, that really wants the job. It's not a good job. It's not, it's not a fun job. It's, you got to take a lot of guff from the public, and so I think, you should definitely have additional weight on a member of the community serving in that position, especially someone who cares so much about the community as, Sean has exhibited, throughout his life. So, I just, I hope you guys take that into consideration, that, you have a candidate that's, fully engaged, and give that a little extra weight. So, thank you.
Thank you. Move to adjourn.
Okay, I'll second that.
No other comment?
Doesn't look like it. All in favor of adjourning? Great, thanks.